It begins in 1861. I have just inherited the throne of the Netherlands. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 676, Capture of the Chilean port of Valdivia. At 5:40 a.m. on October 10, 1878, on the New Zealand steam battleship, Vice Admiral Braga of the Dutch New Zealand fleet looked very serious. He looked at his watch, walked to the bottom map and looked at it. Vice Admiral Braga ordered, "Order the Ghost No. 6 submarine formation. 10 Dutch submarines are formation, starting with serial number 1, to use torpedoes to attack the British warships in Valdivia port. When the submarines attack, other surface ships should not act rashly and should not act without authorization. The warships should be prepared. After the British warships chase the submarines out of Valdivia port, our warships will fire from the side. At the same time, our No. 7 submarine formation will ambush around and be ready to support at any time. The goal is to annihilate the 7 British warships in this port and prepare to ambush the 9 warships that are coming north to support Puerto Montt in the south." After the staff recorded the order, he ran out to convey the order. Dutch radio communication was already at the forefront of the world, so when the New Zealand steam battleship's order was transmitted by radio signal, all warships and submarines received the order. Before the war began, the Dutch fleet had already surpassed the British fleet like an arm under the lead of Vice Admiral Braga's communication. So with a sneak attack plan in advance and the order issued as if there was no chance of delay, after giving the King's order, Vice Admiral Braga walked to the viewing window and looked at it, and at the same time couldn't help but keep checking his pocket watch. When the minute hand was close to 5:40 in the morning, Lieutenant General Braga could not help but feel nervous and muttered, "It's coming." As soon as the voice fell, a loud noise was heard, followed by a whistling sound not far away, well, less than 5 kilometers away from the beach in Valdivia harbor, and then there were loud noises again, rumbling several times, like an earthquake, and the entire sea wave seemed to have suddenly increased by half a meter from the front of the warship, like a small tsunami. A few minutes later, the integrated Dutch surface fleet had already seen the hull of the British fleet in front of it. Although it was not very clear, it was enough for the fleet's gunners to aim at the other side. Without hesitation, Lieutenant General Braga gave an order, and the 9 Dutch warships lined up in a row, and the muzzles were all aimed at the British surface ships and the port in the distant port. A series of shells whistled in the air from the launch to the shells, and the shells exploded in the far east port like thunder, drowning out all the sounds. Vice Admiral Braga's ears twitched, and he couldn't help but cover his ears with his hands. It took him a while to get used to it. Through the telescope, you can see the smoke of war spreading from the port, especially the port of Valdivia, which was mostly reduced to ashes after a few rounds of bombardment. Vice Admiral Braga was expressionless at this time, holding a telescope to observe the direction of the port, where 2 of the 7 warships shown in the intelligence had sunk, and another one was already emitting thick smoke and seemed to be slowly sinking into the water. There were 4 more that were constantly adjusting their positions, and one even seemed to be bombarding the water's surface. Needless to say, it must be dealing with Dutch submarines. So Vice Admiral Braga would naturally not let go of the hateful one. After 2 minutes of bombardment by 9 warships, the warship still could not escape the fate of sinking into the water to feed the fish. Just as Vice Admiral Braga was about to continue bombarding the remaining 3 normal warships of the other side, he received a message that 8 British warships in Puerto Montt had arrived in the southern waters, 15 nautical miles away. 8 British warships, Braga frowned. The Netherlands currently has only 9 warships here and 20 submarines. The British sank 3 ships, one was unable to fight again due to the thick smoke, and the other 3 were in a long-distance defense posture. If the 8 British warships in the south were together with the 3 ships in front of them, the advantage that the Netherlands had just gained would be lost in an instant. In this way, it would definitely be a tough battle with a hard-to-determine outcome. Even if the victory was achieved with the help of submarines, it would be a miserable victory. So, Lieutenant General Braga decisively gave the order, all submarines should surround these 3 British ships underwater. I want the other side's 8 warships to sink to the bottom of the sea to feed the sharks when they arrive. The battle on the sea was very tragic. Looking at the waves stirred up by the shells, people could not help but be in awe. At this time, on the hillsides at both ends of Valdivia harbor, in the secretly built artillery forts, Many people under President Mascaeno's command accompanied the British staff officers and looked at the smoke all over the harbor anxiously. Immediately after receiving the order to fire, all officers and soldiers tensed up and started to act. Seeing the trees used as camouflage being pushed down, several strong muzzle-loading cannons were exposed. At this time, soldiers from the northern government appeared on land, so under the supervision of British officers and officers from the southern Chilean government, the artillery positions opened fire. However, it seems that the goddess of luck is not only here. The attacking northern government also has artillery, and it is a breech-loading rifled cannon with a longer range, and it is the Dutch 1875 version. Counting, there are no less than 20 guns. Oh God, hurry up, aim all the guns at the enemy's artillery, and you must destroy these cannons of the enemy, the southern government officer who was commanding there shouted. But he did not notice that the British officer next to them had a pale face and was muttering. If you listen closer, you can hear him clearly saying, "Oh my God, that's the most advanced breech-loading rifled cannon in service in the Dutch army. It's over. This is 1.2 times the range of the muzzle-loading rifled cannon. The port of Valdivia is finished." But he was smart and knew that the South American country guys would definitely be dissatisfied if he said this at this time, so he started to make excuses and prepared to leave. The officer standing next to him, who was also from Britain, shook his head and smiled bitterly, saying, "There is no way. We can't reach such a long range now." As soon as the voice fell, the shells of the Dutch 1875 style breech-loading rifled cannon roared, and even if there were no shells, the hillsides of the two positions extended all the way to the port dock, rolling up huge waves several meters high. The three British warships next to them were forced to move forward by the huge waves for dozens of meters. At this time, the shells flying from the sea hit the warship in the middle, which seemed to be the Cape Town ironclad in the South African fleet, and thick smoke rose immediately. Fortunately, it was an ironclad ship and was not sunk by a single shot, which made the two British Army officers feel relieved. But in fact, they were too happy too early. Because just when he breathed a sigh of relief, a torpedo pierced through the bottom of the Cape Town under the water like a flying fish. Immediately, one side of the Cape Town's hull was rapidly swallowed by water in the cabin. In just 2 minutes, 2/3 of the hull that was originally exposed above the sea was submerged. After everyone saw this scene, they knew that the Cape Town was also finished. Chapter 677, the South Africa steam battleship is also sinking. At the same time, the Minister of the Army of the Northern Chilean government, Mesip, and the Dutch instructor Schrek were also organizing the Chilean army to launch a large-scale battle against Valdivia, the northernmost city in southern Chile. What a pity. If our army and your Dutch navy had fired artillery at the three warships on the sea just now, then the remaining two warships might have been hit by the last round of artillery fire. Mesip said with a look of pity on his face. Britain supports the southern government, so for Mesip, the British fleet is the enemy of the northern Chilean government. For the enemy's fleet, it is naturally best to annihilate the entire army. Schrek, the Dutch instructor in Chile who was standing next to him and helped the Chilean army train military affairs, shook his head and smiled bitterly. There is no way, the gunboats can't achieve such accurate shooting. But as soon as he finished speaking, a shell fired from the sea hit the outside of the position, the ground shook, flames ignited, and mud flew everywhere. This was a shell fired by a British warship. Schrek was stunned at first, then laughed. "See, the British artillery is worse than that of our Dutch warships." Mesip also laughed, then shouted to the adjutant next to him, "Order the entire army to advance quickly, and also order all the artillery to suppress a little, just to prevent one team from seizing the opponent's high ground and turrets, especially the latter. Don't worry about the loss, be quick." Under Mesip's urging, 50,000 northern Chilean troops braved the artillery fire and clashed towards the Valdivia position. Although dozens of people were killed by the enemy's several cannons, a total of 10, several of which had been destroyed, the northern army was already close to the high ground and turrets, and even many Chilean soldiers who were slightly injured by the artillery fire were struggling to charge up the hillside. At this time, the defeated northern Chilean army had arrived under the artillery position, and was holding the Mauser No. 2 rifle developed by the Netherlands in 1870 and firing at the opponent's position. At the same time, in the southern Chilean military position. "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, lower your head, do you want to die? Lower your head, rush out quickly to stop the enemy, don't hide in sight and wait for the enemy to besiege our bunker." So a cold-blooded scene appeared. The Chilean officers were self-righteous and forced the soldiers below to stand up. There was even a marginal army that pointed a gun at its soldiers and ordered them to walk out of the bunker to fight the powerful Dutch soldiers. In the distance, Chilean Army Minister Messi and Schreck in the north were holding binoculars and saw this scene. Messi said to Schreck excitedly, "Instructor, it seems that if the artillery fire continues to suppress, maybe in just a quarter of an hour we will be able to occupy Chile's high slope position. If we take it, our battle today will be half successful." After seeing Schreck nod, Messi turned back and gave an order: "Focus a little, focus on shooting at the breached position, and be sure to suppress the artillery fire of the remnants of the Mascaiano army." With the officers and soldiers of the Chilean army in the north or the south, at this moment, whether it is the Chilean army in the north or the Chilean army in the south, they have realized that this high ground is almost indefensible. It is only a matter of time before it is breached. At this time, desperately resisting the attack from the north is just to buy more time to retreat to Puerto Montt. At the same time, the same is true at sea. From the beginning of the war to now, in just less than 40 minutes, the 8 British warships stationed in Puerto Montt have appeared on the sea outside the town of Osorno. In 10 minutes, they will arrive at the battlefield where the battle is taking place. When the time came to 6:30 when they arrived at the port of Valdivia, they saw that there was only one British warship standing alone in the entire port. The port was surrounded by gunfire and smoke. At the same time, suddenly everyone saw that in the city behind the post, the sound of gunfire became smaller and smaller, and finally the national flag of the Chilean northern government was raised throughout Valdivia. Everyone's heart jumped, watching the British warship staying there alone, surprisingly revealing weirdness. At this time, the leader of the fleet was just hesitating because of fear, and suddenly, he was stunned, and looked up and saw a strange sight. Not only him, but everyone in the port looked at the British warship. On the calm sea level, from all around the warship, something with huge waves in the water in 3 directions attacked the warship directly. 5 seconds later, the warship suddenly shook violently, followed by thick smoke coming out from all sides at the same time. 10 seconds later, due to serious injuries, it finally began to slowly fall into the water and became silent. 1 minute later, the entire ship had completely disappeared on the sea. It seemed that it had never appeared. So the British took a few breaths of cold air when they saw this scene. Submarine. And this is the most advanced Dutch submarine in the Netherlands. Ghost number 1 does not have such a shocking effect, because Britain also bought Ghost number 1 from the Netherlands. Then it can only be said that it is the Ghost number 2 submarine in service in the Dutch army. Suddenly, the head of the British fleet showed a big change on his face and hurriedly ordered to retreat to Port Montt. Because he suddenly realized that the other party had just left a warship for himself and others to worry about, and also attracted their attention when they just came here, so that they could not look straight at their brother and explore the city before participating in the action with confidence. But now it was because of the British comrade warship that he and others omitted this step, and the British army that omitted this step was facing unprecedented danger. Suddenly, the person in charge suddenly saw the submarine in the water that had just launched the Dutch torpedo through the telescope, but turned its head towards the direction of his 8 warships. The person in charge couldn't help but exclaimed, "Oh, God, what are these damn Dutch going to do? This is really the Dutch submarine Ghost II. Oh, my God, are they going to launch torpedo bombs from the water at the bottom of our ship?" The person in charge has also seen it. Although the submarines were several hundred meters below the sea surface and their number could not be seen clearly, through the telescope, they could see more than a dozen black shadows swimming slowly and approaching this side. Seeing this, he couldn't help but get goosebumps. Battleships should weigh anchor immediately. Damn it, we are just wasting steam engines and coal. Hurry up, let's return to Puerto Montt. Otherwise, we may be completely wiped out under the water. The person in charge remembered that his eyes were red, and he shouted loudly at the naval officers and soldiers around him. However, his order was a little late, because the battleship under his feet suddenly shook, and then shook violently. Under the attack of more than 10 torpedoes, the violent vibration of the steam battleship South Africa, where he was, caused everyone to stagger. Chapter 678, South America is no longer peaceful. The South Africa steam battleship was also swallowed by the water. Before it completely sank, the remaining 7 British warships had already rushed to the south in tacit agreement, leaving only Lieutenant General Braga, who was preparing to ambush them, with a face full of regret. They all felt that they should have attacked earlier, at least to bombard them first. Lieutenant General Braga comforted, "They didn't raise anchor when they saw something was wrong. Are they stupid enough to feed sharks?" With the help of a telescope, they watched as the northern Chilean soldiers on Valdivia began to make defensive positions. At this time, there was no sound of artillery on the battlefield filled with gunpowder. The gunfire on land has become sporadic. And the gunfire is getting smaller and smaller, and the direction is from the south. Obviously, these southern Mascayano troops have begun to retreat southward. Where to go? Back to where to go. Puerto Montt is their destination for evacuation this time. Lieutenant General Braga guessed correctly. In this war, Chile suffered heavy losses in the south. With a garrison of 10,000 soldiers, facing the 50,000 soldiers sent by the north, more than 7,000 were killed and wounded. The remaining 3,000 people evacuated to the south. However, although the destination was Puerto Montt, they received an order after retreating to Osorno and could only garrison in Osorno. Together with the original 2,000 local people, they formed a guard city north of Puerto Montt with more than 5,000 people. Since South America is far away from Europe and Asia, even North America, which is also in America, did not know about the war that was taking place in Chile on October 10. It was not until October 11, 1878 that all countries received news of the war in Chile. All countries were immediately attracted. Needless to say, the war between the current and previous governments in Chile and South America. The Arturo Lozon government in the north dispatched 50,000 land forces to deal with the 10,000 southern troops stationed in the port city of Valdivia in the south. Many people originally did not think it would succeed, because this seaport city has been stationed with 7 British warships since September, with a total tonnage of 43,000 tons. Among them, there is also the Cape Town ironclad ship, which is the most advanced 8,000-ton warship in Europe. Faced with such a fleet with a tonnage of more than 40,000 tons, there are very few countries in Europe that dare to go to war with Britain. Only Germany, France and Austria-Hungary can do it. The Netherlands can, but now many countries naturally prefer to regard it as a country in the Indo-Pacific Ocean. So the Netherlands is not counted. You must know that for many years, Denmark has been a top 10 naval power, but its tonnage is currently only 90,000 tons. In other words, this fleet temporarily deployed by the United Kingdom alone has reached half of the tonnage of Denmark, the world's 10th naval power, and its warships are more advanced than Denmark. Faced with such a fleet, the North will naturally only be abused if it attacks this seaport city. Attacking the seaport will naturally only be repelled and can only leave in disgrace. Just when everyone thought it would be like this, the information broke that the Netherlands had actually sent a temporary fleet composed of part of the New Zealand fleet's warships to protect northern Chile, and when the Chilean government in the north went south to attack the southern port of Valdivia, 9 Dutch warships actually went south from Santiago. In the end, an unknown number of Dutch submarines were sent, and many people said that it was the Ghost II submarine in active service in the Netherlands that participated in the battle. Under the attack of Dutch surface warships and underwater submarines, Britain was unlucky. The British naval squadron in the port of Valdivia was completely wiped out, and the news came back from Chile that another British squadron stationed in Puerto Montt in the south had hurriedly rushed to support with 9 warships, but when they arrived, they found that the war was over. The Netherlands annihilated 7 British warships in less than an hour, shocking the Puerto Montt squadron at the time. When this fleet just arrived, it also witnessed the process of a British warship being silenced for 1 minute by 10 torpedoes fired by a submarine. In other words, the South was defeated and retreated to Osorno, and from then on lost the important deep water port in central Chile, lost the low point that could be used for attack and defense. The weather in the South is cold in summer, and the area where Macasnoa is currently in power is in the temperate and cold zone. Compared with the richness of Arturo Lozon's chassis in the north, the potential of the South has become smaller and smaller. However, many people speculate that Britain did not live up to its hard work. In this war, the Chilean government in the north sent 50,000 troops, with 9,085 casualties. The Chilean government in the south defended with 10,000 troops, 7,056 casualties, and 2,944 evacuated. Britain lost 8 of its 15 warships, and a total of 2,168 naval soldiers and generals were killed and wounded. The Netherlands had 9 warships and no less than 10 submarines. 1 submarine was sunk, and 1 warship was severely damaged after being bombarded. Fortunately, It did not sink and has been pulled back to the newly seized port of Valdivia for repair. The Netherlands suffered more than 180 casualties in the Navy. This number was quickly sent to the desks of various countries. This made the people involved in the talks in various countries take a deep breath. They were shocked by the huge losses of Britain this time. You should know that the losses of the British Army in North America and the Balkan Peninsula more than a decade ago were huge, and they were calculated by tens of thousands of people. So at that time, there were constant protests in London and all over Britain, demanding that Britain not start a war. Therefore, Britain has calmed down a lot in the past few years, but on the issue of Burma, the British government did not slippers, so it did not stop until the end of 1871 Upper Burma was taken. In particular, when Queen Victoria and William IV attended the wedding of Crown Prince Frederick and Princess Louise in Greece in 1870, the two secretly reached a strategic alliance between Britain and the Netherlands to jointly maintain maritime hegemony and balance the land powers of Asia and Europe, which created a solid foundation for the next 7 years of peace. Until the second half of 1877, the two countries claimed that the Strait of Malacca belonged to the British rule because the Netherlands paid attention to the security of Sumatra Island in the west of the Dutch East Indies and opposed the fact that the British Navy was stronger than the Dutch several decades or hundreds of years ago. It's okay that the Netherlands was weak before, but now that the Netherlands has put its focus on the Far East, it will naturally not give up the Strait of Malacca, the easiest shortcut across the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Moreover, if you look at the map, as long as you can clearly see the geographical location of Sumatra Island, no one will think that the Netherlands should give up the rights and interests of the Strait of Malacca, because in comparison, Sumatra Island and the Strait of Malacca are all connected from east to west, and Sumatra Island is the reason for the formation of this strait, while the northern Malay Island is shorter. Because of this, the Netherlands will naturally not be satisfied with Britain's overbearing approach, so the dispute between the two countries has begun. The Netherlands is strong enough to make Britain suffer such a big defeat. No one thinks that Britain will be willing to swallow this bitter fruit, so everyone is waiting to see what kind of revenge Britain will take against the Netherlands. Chapter 679, Argentina Intervention. 1878, Napoleon III of the Second French Empire announced in Paris that he would send his only son, Crown Prince Eugene, to leave Paris on October 16 to visit Paraguay to consolidate the friendship between France and Paraguay. At present, the nearly 23-year-old French Crown Prince Eugene has arrived in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He will enter Paraguay from Brazil by land. On October 14, 1878, the German Empire announced that Crown Prince Frederick would leave Berlin for Asunción, the capital of Paraguay, on October 15 at the invitation of Paraguayan President Pallas, and has landed in Uruguay. The German Empire has already sent a request to Argentina for care. Crown Prince Frederick will pass through Argentina along the Paraná River with a small fleet and finally arrive in Asunción, Paraguay upstream. The two European powers are actually competing to visit Paraguay one after another. The mystery here is hard to figure out. At the same time, on October 15, the British Parliament passed an agreement to develop friendly relations with Argentina and won more than 2/3 of the support in the Senate. Along with the development of this friendly relationship, the British Parliament passed a gift of 5 second-hand battleships, including 1 second-class sailing battleship, 1 fourth-class sailing battleship and 3 fifth-class sailing battleships, to Argentina. The generous gift from the UK immediately made the suspicion of the UK-Argentina relationship a hot topic in international current affairs. Argentina, as the Netherlands' main ally in South America, has always been the Netherlands' most important ally in South America and one of the pillars of the Netherlands' influence in South America. The Netherlands just won a battlefield victory in Chile, an ally of the UK, and gained support from northern Chile, becoming the Netherlands' de facto ally. Everyone knows that this round was a move by the UK, and the Netherlands won. For this reason, many people in the UK were unhappy. The Netherlands was naturally full of joy. However, in less than 5 days, the UK immediately offered Argentina a hand of friendship by legislating and giving benefits as bait. Will Argentina accept the bait thrown by the UK? If the bait is swallowed by the UK, how will the Netherlands react? Will the relationship between the Netherlands and Argentina break down? If the Netherlands loses Argentina as an ally, will the influence of the Netherlands in South America be broken? Countries like Britain, France, and Germany took the opportunity to rise. South America has since become a playground for big countries. So Argentines have never been the focus of the world like they are now. Therefore, Mider's influence is spreading as expected. On October 16, 1878, despite the opposition of his staff, Argentine President Mider thanked Britain for its support for the construction of the Argentine Navy in the capital Buenos Aires, and declared that this free warship was the largest gift in history for Argentina. Therefore, in return, Argentina will allow friendly Britain to continue to maintain the Strait of Magellan. Mider also announced that if Argentina intervened in the internal war of its neighbor Chile, he would support the North and the South to sit down and negotiate a solution. In this press conference, Mider expressed his intention to change his alliance with the Netherlands, but was willing to approach Britain and listen to the different opinions of Britain, the world's most powerful naval power, on the governance of South America. The Argentine President Mider also announced that he would support Britain's legitimate rights and called on Britain and the Netherlands to sit down and negotiate to resolve the dispute. Mider also specifically announced that he would be willing to invite the prime ministers of the two countries to Buenos Aires, the capital of Argentina, for a face-to-face meeting at an appropriate time, and he was willing to host a meeting between the two as a neutral party. Britain naturally welcomed it. However, the Netherlands questioned Britain's sincerity and was unwilling to go abroad to negotiate with the Netherlands. On October 10, 1878, the Chilean North and South, backed by Britain and the Netherlands, launched a land war as agents. At the same time, Britain and the Netherlands had fought again in Chile after 14 years since South Africa in 1864, and this time it was a direct confrontation at sea. In the first round, the Netherlands won a great victory. At the same time, the Arturo Lozon government in northern Chile seized the central city of Valdivia port on the north-south dividing line of Chile, and officially gained the initiative to attack and defend when dealing with the Mascareño government in the south. On October 16, 1878, Mascareño was very angry in Puerto Montt. As he was driven out of Santiago, the capital of Chile, he originally thought that he could quickly retake Santiago with the support of the British. Moreover, the Whigs and Tories in London clearly told him that Britain would definitely support him. Therefore, during his administration, the relationship between Chile and Britain has always maintained a very close alliance. But now look, Chile has become what it is now. Fortunately, Argentina, which used to compete with him, has also turned to Britain. This time, it should be able to confront the Netherlands. At least under the strong influence of Britain and Argentina, the Netherlands cannot take care of both. Mascareño has been able to be the president of Chile for many years, so naturally he has a certain political sensitivity. Therefore, although his family has received a lot of bribes over the years, it is precisely because of this that he is hated by the Chileans in the north and was driven out of office. Just thinking about it, he suddenly thought of a problem. That is, instead of waiting for Britain's support, it is better to find another helper to supplement Britain. As Mascareño's confidant, Bigson no longer had the energy to guide Mascareño to think. He went straight to the point and said, "Mr. President, we can ask Argentina for help." Argentina? Is Argentina willing to send troops to help us? You know, Mider and I had a war over the Cordillera Mountains. If we ask them for help now, will it affect their view of us? Besides, they are out of reach of us and it will be difficult to get much benefit. Is Argentina mobilizing troops for this? Although Mascareño has been uneasy recently, it has not affected his political judgment yet, and he still knows the difficulties of dealing with Argentina. No, Argentina will be willing to intervene in Chile's internal strife. Bigson said in an affirmative tone. Bigson looked at Mascareño with a doubtful look and explained in a deep voice, "Although Argentina's troops are far from Buenos Aires to us, don't forget that for Argentina, the Netherlands is Britain's biggest challenger, and the Netherlands is also Argentina's biggest obstacle to expanding its influence in South America. So Mider, like the president, wants to reduce the strength of the Netherlands in South America. To this end, he can cooperate with Argentina, and Argentina also needs our support. I have something to write today, and I will upload a total of 3 chapters tomorrow. Chapter 680, The Netherlands' Fierce Counterattack. 1878, former President Mascareño, who ruled in southern Chile, announced his support for the close relationship between Britain and Argentine President Mider. He said in Puerto Montt that he would seek to join the tripartite cooperation in the Strait of Magellan to jointly maintain peace in the Strait of Magellan and the Drake Passage, the southernmost region of South America. Mascherano also said that he had asked Argentine President Mitre for help and invited Mitre to visit southern Chile to deepen the relationship between Argentina and southern Chile. In response, the Argentine Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated at a press conference that President Mitre had accepted the invitation, but the time was to be determined. At the same time, the Argentine Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that President Mitre had written to Arturo Lozán of the Chilean government in the north, expressing his willingness to support peace talks between the north and south of Chile and jointly negotiate a way to peace. Argentina's closeness to Britain and the fact that Argentina openly announced that it would host the peace talks between the two sides of the Chilean Civil War immediately made the Kingdom of the Netherlands very dissatisfied. Even within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, many people were furious and wanted to cut Argentine President Mitre into pieces to vent their hatred. On October 19, 1878, the headquarters of the three major parties in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the Liberal Party, the Christian Party, and the Socialist Party, all expressed dissatisfaction with Argentina's practice of undermining the interests of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Liberal Party spokesman, the actions of the ruling party in Argentina are very regrettable. We have a good past with President Mitre and our cooperation is very memorable. Therefore, we cherish the relationship between the Argentine government led by President Mitre and the Netherlands. The Liberal Party is very friendly to the Argentine people, so we will continue to promote a friendly relationship between the Dutch society and the Argentine government and the people. We do not think that the relationship between the Netherlands and Argentina will end. Therefore, in order to promote the development of relations between the two countries, our Liberal Party has sent a delegation of congressmen and senators to visit Argentina. Christian Party, we will not watch Argentina and the Netherlands drift further and further apart, so the Christian Party will send members to Argentina and carry out humanitarian visits there. We will communicate closely with various factions of the local church there. Our Christian Party has not only Catholics, but also Protestants, so we will support the believers of the two countries to continue to strengthen communication. Socialist Party, we are committed to more frank communication with Argentina, but we will insist on safeguarding the interests of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Socialist Party is a political party composed of immigrants. Now there are more than 30,000 new Argentine Dutch immigrants in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. We will use these more than 30,000 Argentines to draw closer to Argentina, but at the same time, we will also promote the development of relations with various forces in Argentina. Perhaps affected by the situation in Argentina, both the north and south of Chile chose to temporarily cease fire. It was difficult to come to October 20th unknowingly, and it was the arrival of summer in the southern hemisphere. As the saying goes, there are many events in autumn, but compared to autumn, this year's summer in the southern hemisphere is not calm at all. Needless to say, Chile is divided into north and south, and Britain and the Netherlands used Chile to carry out proxy wars, and tens of thousands of people died. For Chile, which has a population of only 1.8 million, the casualties are not small. On October 17, 1878, the Peruvian opposition party launched a coup d'état and failed. Nearly one-third of the party members were shot. President Prado has always been close to the Netherlands and Spain and opposed Britain, so Britain has been pushing the opposition party to govern, but this time it failed, so Britain strongly condemned Prado. The Netherlands and Spain are exactly the opposite. Both countries support Prado's approach. Obviously, the endorsement of the two countries made Prado very proud. He announced the severance of diplomatic relations with Britain in Lima and formally requested the British embassy in Lima to leave Peru immediately. At the same time, he recalled the Peruvian ambassador to London and disbanded the embassy representative office there. Colombia also banned British ships from docking at ports in the Caribbean and Pacific. Colombia said that it would not welcome the existence of the British embassy in Colombia together with Peru, because the British embassy in Colombia carried out irregular diplomatic practices, developed a spy system in Bogotá, and tried to overthrow the government of the current President Mosquera. Therefore, many nests have been detected and destroyed. Even in Venezuela, there was an incident where British-backed forces were brewing pro-British forces to come to power, but they were suppressed by various governments, and some were even directly eradicated. Britain has suffered heavy losses this time, Bismarck sighed with fear. Who says it's not? William I said, the series of counterattacks by the Netherlands were both accurate and timely. The strength that Britain has secretly cultivated in various countries over the years has suddenly returned to the pre-Middle Ages. Almost half of the forces hidden in South America since the 18th century have been pulled out by 2.5 These families have been secretly cultivated by Britain for many years. They have been protected by Britain for decades or even hundreds of years, but they are waiting for the opportunity to rise to the top in one step. But I didn't expect that the Netherlands was behind the scenes and secretly figured out these British spies who had been buried for 100 years. It was really surprising. Crown Prince William said, the Netherlands supported the successful coup of Arturo Lozon in Chile, and Mascherano, who was originally supported by Britain, fled to the south. The Netherlands then launched an attack on the south and won. The British and Dutch navies suffered a great defeat in the first round of direct war. Then, in order to save face, Britain secretly made friends with Argentina, the most important South American ally of the Netherlands. It seemed that the poaching was successful, and the Netherlands was furious. Under the leadership of Peru and Colombia, Venezuela and Ecuador simultaneously witnessed the shocking scene of the elimination of British forces. He said, the counterattack of the Netherlands is not light. This wave of counterattack by William IV accurately hit the vital points of Britain in various countries. Taking advantage of the fear of the successful coup in Chile and the failure of the coup in Peru, Britain intervened in the coup, which made the whole of South America doubt the role of Britain. Therefore, I think we should realize that Britain has only one last fight left, and it must do its best to support Argentina. Bismarck suddenly asked, what is Mitter's role? Crown Prince William smiled and said, of course it is the main force. Bismarck, the main force that Britain uses to deal with the Netherlands. Crown Prince William nodded and said, yes, only in this way can the Netherlands face its allies directly, while Britain is just waving flags and shouting. The people who lose are not the people in the original circle of allies of the Netherlands. Naturally, Britain is happy to give it a push. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 681, A Family of Six in the Palace. Kingdom of the Netherlands, Australia, Melbourne. What does this have to do with Spain? Prince Jacques asked. Of course it has something to do with it. Spain was once the hegemon of Latin America and one of the hegemons of the world's seas. Spain lost its hegemony in the Anglo-Spanish Naval War, but it cannot lose its position in South America. Britain has always been Spain's biggest threat and the biggest obstacle to its resurgence. If Spain can see Britain lose its position in South America, then Spain is likely to put a knife in its back. Spain does not mind sending troops to help the Netherlands fight Britain in South America. Besides, Spain does not need to send many troops, a few thousand are enough. For Spain, which has 400,000 soldiers, this is just a drop in the bucket. Princess Anna analyzed in an orderly manner. Queen Alexandra was overjoyed to hear this. She was pleased that her eldest daughter Anna had grown up, and she also agreed with Anna's views. If Spain intervened, even if Britain was unwilling in her heart, it did not mean that she would not succumb. Even if hegemonic Britain had to consider whether it was too difficult to deal with Spain in addition to Britain and the Netherlands. At this time, her eldest son, Prince Albert, smiled and added, Spain has been working hard to build the Philippines. Currently, more than 3 million immigrants from Spain have come to the Philippines. Compared with the local 6 million natives, it is only half, but it is a great improvement compared to the past. Now the Spanish have firmly controlled the Philippines. Princess Mary asked doubtfully, isn't this just right? In the past, they were far away from our Dutch mainland in Europe. Now they have immigrated many people to the Philippines, which is closest to Sulawesi and Maluku Islands in the East Indies of our Kingdom of the Netherlands. At present, the Netherlands is fully committed to developing the economy, and Spain is developing the Philippines. I think that even if we ask Spain to seek their support in South America, they will not hesitate, because at present, in the world, the country with the most similar ideas to the Netherlands is Spain, and compared with the United Kingdom, Spain is much less threatening to the Netherlands. The 8-year-old Princess Mary's explanation surprised everyone. However, thinking of Prince Jacques, who is also 8 years old, he is so smart and his sensitivity to politics is amazing. Queen Alexandra and William IV looked at each other and smiled with relief. At this time, the eldest son, Prince Albert, 14 years old, interrupted and said, it is true that Spain can help the Netherlands. The British bases were annihilated in South America this time. The intelligence supported by Spain secretly played an indispensable role. but it was because of the secret that Spain would not easily offend Britain. To be honest, it would be best for Spain if the Netherlands went to war with Britain. It would be better than Spain fighting well with Britain. We can get to know the details of the two countries from our war with Britain, and then Spain will take revenge on Britain and take back Gibraltar in the future. The sacrifice of the Netherlands is worth it. Prince Albert, 14 years old, is 164 centimeters tall. When he stands up, he is almost the same height as Queen Alexandra, who is 168 centimeters tall, the standard height of Danes. It is because of excellent genes. With a mixed blood of William IV 185 centimeters and Queen Alexandra 168 centimeters, the height of their children is not a worry for them. You all made good analysis. Spain is the great contributor to our fight against Britain's secret forces in South American countries. However, the most important achievement this time is not the loss of those British forces, but the fact that Spain has turned to our side because of this. Queen Alexandra pointed to the map and said, "Look at this world map. In the Pacific Ocean, Spain's Philippines and our Alaska Peninsula and the Dutch East Indies and Australia in the south are like a pillar supporting our territories in the north and south. The corresponding one is the Caribbean Sea. In mainland Europe, Spain is in southern Europe, and we are in western Europe, separated by France and Britain. The two countries united together can pose a huge threat to both Britain and France." Faced with such a situation, Spain almost semi-publicly chose to stand on our side this time. For others, this is the most critical. Prince Albert and the others were all stunned, and then they came to their senses. William IV said, "At present, Britain seems to be struggling, but in fact, it is just trying to create chaos in South America. In fact, we are being taken advantage of by others." Seeing the backgrounds of several children, William IV said, "Don't disbelieve it. In the past, everyone knew that the South American Union was dominated by the Netherlands, so all countries in South America except Brazil, Paraguay, Chile and Uruguay have extraordinary relations with the Netherlands. Now, with Argentina's disloyalty, the Netherlands' strength there has almost died. This is not only what Britain wants to see, but even other European countries also agree with Britain's various counterattacks against us." The 12-year-old Princess Anna learned to be shy and asked, "I know, Father, what you mean is that all countries are actually dissatisfied with the Netherlands' growing interests in South America, and correspondingly, like a zero-sum game, let the Netherlands fall and who will retreat, and each country will develop its own strength in South America on the basis of the Netherlands." Yes. William IV looked at his eldest daughter with approval. William IV looked at them, and then said, "There is no free lunch in the world, nor is there any love that comes for free. I believe we can make our own judgments. As a symbol of a political family, you, as members of the Dutch royal family, are born with more missions than others. Strengthening the Netherlands, maintaining the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and developing the Kingdom of the Netherlands is what we strive for all our lives. In order to develop the Netherlands, your grandfather passed the throne to me in 1861. Why? It was not because he was incompetent, but because he did not have the courage to face Britain's concerns and retaliation. Of course, he thought that I was more capable of managing the Kingdom of the Netherlands, so your grandfather's vision was also wise." Prince Albert asked, "Father, my grandfather is currently ruling as king in Greece with Uncle Frederick in Greece, but we find that there are few wars, while we in the Netherlands are constantly experiencing frictions of all sizes. What is the reason for this?" William IV, "This is naturally because when we become strong, we no longer care about others, but envy them. Look at the school you go to, and then look at the common people who go to primary compulsory education schools. Do you think they will be jealous of you? I think everyone will, and those who say they won't are basically hypocritical." Chapter 682, Spies Disrupt the Country. While William IV and his family were discussing international topics at the Dutch Royal Palace in Melbourne, in Argentina, South America, Mitre supported the British approach, which was praised and criticized at home. In particular, no one knew that Argentina's economic development has been rapid in recent years. In addition to Argentina's own hard work, no one denied that the role of the Netherlands is absolutely crucial. According to a poll conducted by an Argentine newspaper, in a data conducted on October 17 that exceeded all parts of the country that Argentines trust most is the Netherlands. The second is Chile. The third is the United States of America. The fourth is Bolivia. Britain ranks 10th among the countries trusted by Argentina, ahead of Spain, which was once the colonial master of South American countries. Such a poll made the Argentine government very embarrassed. But they dare not make excessive moves for this newspaper, because the major shareholder behind this newspaper is the Netherlands, and the second largest shareholder is the United States of America. Facing them, no matter how strong Mitre is, it is difficult to withstand the suppression of these two powerful countries. After all, they are the largest capital investors in Argentina's agricultural production. The reason why President Mitre had no time to pay attention to this wave in Argentina was because he selectively forgot about it, which caused more Argentines to complain. Especially as Argentina opened up its grain to Britain for support and supported Britain's grain shortage, its domestic food supply was lacking. Originally, Argentina's grain surplus was not much in recent years, only tens of thousands of tons. During the Chilean War some time ago, both the north and south of Chile had already rushed to buy Argentina's grain. Although Argentina made a lot of money by selling grain because of the premium of nearly half, the national storage of grain made the food support proposed by Britain a problem for Argentina's domestic food supply. And considering that Argentina currently feeds more than 200,000 soldiers and needs to subsidize the army every day, Mitre agreed to Britain's request for food supply, but in the end he found himself and Argentina in trouble. British capitalists had already flocked there waiting, so as soon as the Argentine government issued the decree, they immediately used pounds to buy food. However, in just 1 week, Mitre couldn't hold on. As Britain's panic buying of food shortages in the country became more and more severe, Argentina actually had a shortage of food. Mitre had always been generous to the families of soldiers, so he was able to quickly win the hearts of the military. This year was no exception. Pensions and support were all paid in one go, and the amount was large. Mitre learned about the hearts of the people in the Netherlands. In order to win the hearts of the Argentine people, he introduced a new law that the children of war and accelerated and injured soldiers would be supported by the state. In the first one-time payment, Mitre paid 10,000 tons and 300,000 pounds, which means that Mitre can't move other food now. Mitre pointed out that Mitre still needs to wait until the autumn harvest before new food will appear. Mitre can only buy a lot of food from the people and then participate in the domestic shortage. Argentina suffered a food shortage a few years ago. Argentines naturally have lingering fears about this. Everyone began to compete with the Argentine government to buy food and hide it at home. In addition, the Netherlands bought a lot of food, which caused the price of food in Argentina to soar rapidly, and it was raised to twice the usual price. This is the result of less than a month. The government does things, and the people pay for them. Mitre's approach made the people who were doing farm work in the country very dissatisfied. After all, this has been their way of life for many years. Food prices are getting higher and higher. This also makes people in Argentina, the world's largest food exporter, more and more resentful. At this time, the spies trained by the Intelligence Observation Room, established by William IV himself, also appeared and played their role. Buenos Aires, Argentina. Alice, life is getting harder and harder now. There haven't been any disasters in the past few years, but the grain price is still so high. A small merchant sitting in a small restaurant drank 2 sips of cheap wine and began to sigh unknowingly. As soon as the merchant finished speaking, it immediately resonated with other people in the small restaurant. A colleague working at the dock couldn't help but sighed. Who said that? Last year, the grain price was pushed down, which is about half of the current price, which is almost twice the premium in normal years. This year, the weather is good, although we can't say it is a bumper harvest. It can be regarded as a small harvest, but it is also a harvest in normal years. But I didn't expect that the grain price this year is so expensive, a full double. And the money in the capital of Argentina hasn't increased at all. Life is tight. Others also spit when they hear this. The merchant who had just spoken slammed the food on Wang's table and cursed, "It's all the damned, that top guy who did it. If it weren't for that, this year wouldn't be so hard, it's just like torture." The people nearby looked at each other. Some of them didn't understand what the merchant meant. The colleague who just met the dock asked first, "Brother, what do you mean by that? What damn guy did it? Was it those grain merchants? I see their hearts, livers, lungs, and kidneys are all black like inkstones." The merchant heard this, hesitated, sighed deeply, drank a sip of wine, and said dissatisfiedly, "No more. No more." What grain merchant? If it wasn't for that guy, our grain prices would be so high. The others were curious about what the merchant said, and a guest urged, "Brother, what do you mean by that?" "That's right, sir, tell us your age," another guest urged. A customer who was dressed in a more fashionable way shouted to the boss, "Shopkeeper, please give this gentleman a bottle of expensive wine from France. The money will be on me." Soon a bottle of expensive French wine arrived at the merchant's low table. The merchant immediately scratched his head in embarrassment and said, "How can I be so embarrassed?" The guest who was dressed more elegantly waved his hand generously and said, "You are too polite, sir. Can you tell us why the price of grain here is so high in normal years?" Hearing this, the merchant hesitated for a moment and said, "I also heard this from a customer in Nukain City, Zapala province. I don't know whether it is true or not. Just treat it as a joke." Of course, the other guests were immediately cheered up when they saw what the merchant was going to say, and they also agreed with an appreciative tone. After taking a sip of the expensive French wine, the merchant said, "I'm sure you all know that Britain and Argentina have joined forces to fight against the Netherlands." Of course. When the other guests saw what the small merchant was about to say, they immediately perked up and agreed to what the small merchant said. The small merchant drank a bowl of warm wine, and then said, "I'm sure you all know that Britain has joined forces with Argentina and southern Chile to challenge the Netherlands and northern Chile, right?" "Of course, I heard that this caused a lot of trouble in the Netherlands, and all major parties even announced their policies on Argentina," said the well-dressed guest who had just nodded. It was obvious that he knew a lot too. Chapter 683 concerns at the Argentine presidential palace. "Of course, I heard that the Chilean Civil War caused a lot of deaths over there. The Dutch sunk 8 British warships in the sea to the south, and more than 2,000 people fell into the water as the warships sank and became fish." The Argentine merchant with a small amount of capital nodded and said, "Yes, many people died, but what you don't know is that many of them actually came from the Argentine border. Among them, many of the dead people in southern Chile have relatives living in the southern provinces of Argentina." The doc coolly asked, "There are both northern and southern Chile. Is there a problem?" The merchant nodded and replied, "Of course there is a problem, because after the war broke out here, the Argentine relatives on both sides began to buy food for their relatives in Chile, and the food from Argentina was transported here continuously." Seeing these people's faces change drastically after hearing this, the merchant said, "Do you know how much food these relatives have bought for their relatives in Chile these days?" "How much?" A customer scratched his head and said, "It's good to have 10% of the food circulating on the market, right?" In his opinion, Argentina has 5 million people and Chile has 1.8 million people. It is a very remarkable number to be able to buy 10% of the food in circulation from Argentina. After all, Argentina also exports to Europe, and the local area also needs food as food for civilians. At most 15%. The guest with brighter clothes stretched out a finger and said boldly. Other guests also put forward their own ideas. The long position is 15% of the guests just now, just over 1/7. The merchant stretched out 2 fingers with disdain, shook them and said, "You are all wrong. It is said that 2/3 of the food circulating in the Argentine market has been purchased as food for the north and south of Chile. Some have arrived and some are still on the way, and now it is increasing every day." All the guests were stunned. My God, 2/3, that is to say, Argentina only has 1/3 left after this purchase of food. How can Argentina have enough food to feed itself? No wonder we in Argentina are suffering from food shortages everywhere. The food that originally belonged to us has become other people's rations. We are starving while others are fighting. How can this be justified? 2/3, my God, is President Mitre serving Chile? Or is he serving the British strategy? Anyway, he is letting his fellow countrymen starve, and he would rather do this than support a foreign war. Yes, it's bearable for just 1 month, but what if it's like this for half a year, or the next 2 or 3 years? I think anyone who cares about Argentina will not easily make the mistake of not loving the people. Do you think Argentina still has surplus food to develop and grow itself? So I think President Mitre's practice of allowing southern Chile and the United Kingdom to buy up Argentina's domestic food for export should be stopped, and even policies should be introduced. Only after ensuring that the people in Argentina do not starve, should exports be allowed abroad. Otherwise, as long as President Mitre continues to open up, how can domestic food prices be reduced, and how can our fellow countrymen continue to eat the cheapest food in the world? The doc calmly said indignantly, by doing this, President Mitre is not caring about us fellow countrymen. Aren't we Argentines going to please foreigners like Britain and southern Chile by growing the food? Who says it isn't? But this is the fate of us Argentines. Think about it, President Mitre is so powerful. His family is still the most powerful family in Argentina, owning the most fertile provinces of Buenos Aires, Santa Fe, La Pampa, Córdoba and Paraná. This family has already made these areas their family's development of the national economy and linked it to their own economic power," said the merchant. Another guest who was conspicuously dressed said, "Yes, at present, Mitre seems to be improving its relations with Britain. In order to please the nobles in London, England, the Mitre family is helping Britain to implement their ideas. Look at how President Mitre recently supported Britain's cruise in the Strait of Magellan and our Tierra del Fuego. This is handing over our territory to others for management. Now, for the prosperity of his family, he would rather sacrifice our country's strategic interests. I even heard that now in the government, many people also read Mitre and began to support his son, the mayor of Buenos Aires, Carter, to gradually move to the political core of Argentina, so they have tightened the family power of various government officials, which makes many people unhappy. What's the matter? For the prosperity of his own family, he would rather let his people starve than let Argentina's food flow into the hands of London, England and southern Chile. How strange is that?" the merchant said helplessly and indignantly. After hearing a lot, some guests were shocked by the news and said in disbelief, "No way. That's right, Mitre is at least the most powerful person in Argentina, and the head of the most powerful country in South America. He is not satisfied yet and needs to please Britain to continue to prosper his family," a guest said with dissatisfaction. The merchant sneered and interrupted, "Then who do you think President Mitre is? When he was young, his bones were hard and everyone respected him, but now more than 10 years have passed and he is old, his bones are softer than ointment, tofu, and can't get much? If President Mitre is really a good president, then he should immediately stop the export of national food, and even open up domestic food reserves for disaster relief and fair food prices, but will he? At the same time, we should continue to maintain good relations with the Netherlands, and the relationship with the UK can be improved, but we should not link the other side in this way. That way, we will deal with those arrogant people in the UK, which is just self-humiliation. After all, no one respects those who lick their own knees and ask for benefits, and you should be the same. And the most important thing is that most of our industrial imports in Argentina now come from the Netherlands, and 80% of our weapons imports are produced in the Netherlands. The strongest maritime weapon in Argentina is the steam battleship Mitre, which was built by the Netherlands and handed over to us in 1872. It is currently the best portrayal of our protection of the Argentine coast. If the few sailing battleships given by the United Kingdom can make it difficult for Argentina to obtain the most advanced maritime weapons in the Netherlands, will this be a mistake that is not worth the loss? Everyone's face changed drastically. In recent years, Argentina has been able to stand up in South America because Argentina is not only the second largest economic power after Brazil, but also a country with a stronger navy than Brazil. Unlike Pedro II and Prime Minister Fonseca, who competed for hegemony between the two powers, which led to fierce internal struggles in Brazil, Argentina was peaceful and Mitre was in power. The efficiency of all governments has been greatly improved. So now Argentina's economy and politics are loved by the people, but these were a few years ago. Since Carter, Mitre, became the mayor of the capital, everything has changed. The domestic situation seems to be shrouded in crisis, and the people are also surging. In recent years, the Netherlands and Argentina have been on good terms. Because of the Netherlands' relationship with Argentina, when we Argentines were doing business in foreign countries, especially in Europe, they helped us many times when we were bullied. And you see, the British bullied men and women in the Argentine Valley, but the government gave up and chose to keep quiet after paying a small amount of money. Let me tell you, the price of food is so high now because the local grain harvest in the UK is low and there is a famine, so the British began to use pounds to plunder our domestic labor income. They are even afraid of continuing to starve, so their government encourages British merchants to hoard food in order to deal with possible food crises, while also pushing up the food prices in Argentina and Chile, and making a fortune by buying low and selling high. They can't even hold the money they earn, and what's the result? Our own president didn't say a word and didn't punish them. When our own merchants hoarded food to deal with the crisis, they were killed by the presidential palace and the government, and exiled to Tierra del Fuego in the south. We Argentines are really not human. The merchant seemed to be more and more dissatisfied, with a sad face, which made the other guests feel sad. Alice, There is nothing we can do. Who told Mitre to be the president? Moreover, it is said that the Mitre family also participated in the hoarding of grain and buying low and selling high. They made as much as the British, and the British still got the stigma. What a shitty president, he is only making profits for himself. The merchant couldn't help cursing. Sir, you've drunk too much? The wine is taking its toll, a guest kindly reminded. Oh, the merchant woke up immediately and stopped talking about it, but a seed of hatred for the Mitre family was planted in the hearts of everyone present. Everyone knows that now is the time when Argentina is facing the inability of the president to help the country progress, so they found themselves in a state of confusion. In the Argentine presidential palace, President Mitre and his son, Buenos Aires Mayor Carter. Even the bigwigs in the government are not in harmony. It seems that President Mitre's instructions have been violated, or it can be said that they are secretly obeying. For example, this time President Mitre asked people to support South Chile, but also continued to communicate with North Chile, but many people stood on the side of North Chile. Because the one standing over there is supported by the Netherlands. To put it simply, Argentina has been infiltrated by the Netherlands after more than 10 years of development and its alliance with the Netherlands. Mitre analyzed to his son, if we don't stop it now, the Netherlands may cultivate its own pro-Dutch forces in the future. Now in Argentina, I have felt that this undercurrent is accelerating and rising. If we don't suppress it, it will soon backfire on our Mitre family. Chapter 684, Remote Control of the Argentine Coup. In Melbourne, Australia, William IV was sitting in the Dutch royal palace, remotely controlling the situation in South America, including Argentina. He was very confident about his situation in Argentina this time. This time, he had carefully designed a subversion case for many years, and Sarmiento would definitely not let him down. You know, Sarmiento has received full support since 1858. Now 20 years have passed, and it is time to harvest. Thinking back to the cases in his previous life, he couldn't help but feel that the situation in Argentina was just child's play. Since the Portuguese coup in 1974, the world has entered the so-called third wave of democratization. In this wave of democratic revolution, more than 30 countries around the world have carried out political reforms and transformed from authoritarianism to democracy. It was regarded by the world at that time as one of the best political trends in the late last century. However, the reasons, methods, and social and cultural backgrounds of these stock market transformations are different, which makes the situation of maintaining economic development and stability in the democratic process also different. Therefore, after the second half of the 20th century, many non-Western countries, like an infection, have also suffered from the problem of non-liberal democracy. In 1987, the Philippine Constitution restored the American-style, three-power separation of power political system stipulated in the 1835 Constitution, with a president holding executive power, the legislature having a bicameral Congress exercising legislative power, and the judiciary having independent judicial power. However, after the 21st century, the country is still at least deeply rooted in a powerful oligarchy. The democratic system left over from the U.S. colonial period in the Philippines excluded the grassroots class and allowed the elite to take power. In the 21st century, 70% of the seats in the Senate and House of Representatives of the Philippines are composed of family-ruled dynasties, and the nation has become a game of their family politics. Even their presidents were elected as the new presidents of the Philippines in an overwhelming manner. Other families occupied important positions such as vice presidents like Pork. Now Argentina is even more brutal on this basis. Look at the biggest portrayal of the oligarchy politics in Argentina ruled by President Mitre. Moreover, each family still divides its own forces by territorial division. The southern Argentina currently occupied by Sarmiento is the best result of this ghost area in more than 20 years. Therefore, although the Philippine democracy in the 21st century has been in place for many years, the people are very dissatisfied with their system, which is mainly reflected in the implementation of the national system. Among them, officials of all sizes are making profits for their own interests, and almost all of them are controlled by a few elite families. This makes the people seem to have control of the votes, but they have no actual ability to check and balance these politicians who have long controlled power and money. Family politics not only reveals the persistent control of a few elite families over the politics of the Philippines in the 21st century and Argentina in the 19th century, but also reflects to some extent that the constitutions of the two countries under the rule of the powerful leaders have been destroyed by themselves. Behind the free constitution, fair elections, and freedom of the press, power and wealth are firmly controlled by a few elites. In the 21st century, the 40 richest families in the Philippines devoured 76% of the country's wealth, while in 1878, the 10 political families in Argentina controlled more than 80% of the wealth. The inequality of power and the excessive concentration of wealth made these two democratic countries the laughingstock of the 19th and 21st centuries. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but think of his main ally in Asia, the Kingdom of Siam, that is, Thailand. In the 21st century, you, as a representative of the military, failed to reach an agreement among the major parties, so he launched a military coup to overthrow the elite caretaker government. The political situation in the Kingdom of Siam in the 21st century has been in a state of instability for a long time. Although it is a constitutional monarchy, the King of Siam, as the orthodox symbol of national sovereignty, still has a great influence on the constitution. This can be seen from the frequent changes of prime ministers in the country in the 21st century. William IV believes that the key to this situation may be repeated political reforms and constitutional amendments, as well as the result of power struggles between the royal family and the military. Therefore, he analyzed that the difference between Siam's politics in the 21st century and other countries is that its monarchical network is deeply buried under the surface of democracy, and its emergence and operation methods seriously affect the political direction of the Kingdom of Siam in the 21st century, so that liberalism and democracy have become the core of the country's political system. Chapter 685, The Dutch Democracy Brand Impacts the World for the First Time. On the other side of the Pacific Ocean. On October 20, 1878, the Socialist Party, the third largest party in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, published its first report on global human rights in the Australian Daily News. Its appearance shocked the world. In this report, which was personally signed by Jules Darnetten, leader of the Socialist Party, and Henry Darley, General Secretary of the International Labour Union and Dutch social reform thinker, various parts of protecting the human rights of the people of the world were listed. Among them, this report made many suggestions for Europe and Latin America, especially it severely criticized the democratically elected governments of Latin America. Jules Darnetten, leader of the Socialist Party, even put forward new requirements for the ruling party of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Not only should it safeguard the interests of the Netherlands, but the future ruling party of the Netherlands should also take it as its responsibility to safeguard global social human rights, and require the future Dutch government to make more positive and loud voices in human rights. A recent survey of the Latin American Democratic Dynamics Survey pointed out that today many Latin Americans do not support democracy, accounting for more than 60%, and less than a quarter of them are satisfied with the changes brought about by democracy to their countries. The reason is believed to be related to the Spanish colonial history of the entire region. Since 1870, the democratic wave initiated by the Kingdom of the Netherlands first shook the entire Latin America, including Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Bolivia and the Nicolas, Paraguay and Peru, and later also affected Colombia, Venezuela and Mexico. Today, the region seems to be in a democratic dilemma, and the political parties that have been in power for many years have fallen into a strong position. Among them, Venezuela has become a model of democracy in Latin America, with elections held every 6 years, and everything is in order. Argentina, which was originally democratic in Latin America, has become the least democratic country in Latin America. So William IV has a different plan for this. And he also attacked Argentina to break the evolution of Latin America along the oligarchic politics. At present, the three major parties in the Netherlands have changed perfectly, successfully making the Netherlands the leader of the second democratization. This is a challenge to the 17th century, when Britain became the leader of Europe in terms of the system of constitutional monarchy and established a most solid foundation for the hegemony of the future for more than 200 years. Now the Netherlands has implemented a three-party and multi-party system since 1870, which shocked the world and made the world's leading old European countries pay close attention to the Netherlands' every move. In particular, the Kingdom of the Netherlands moved its capital to Melbourne in the Far East Australian continent in 1870, which made Europe feel mixed emotions, making the Netherlands a place where Europe needs to stretch its neck to observe. The Netherlands is far away from the European storm, which has given the Netherlands a piece of pure land to avoid war. At first, democracy worked quite smoothly in Europe and Latin America. The economic situation grew at an unprecedented high speed, and the number of middle-class people increased slightly. However, the good times did not last long. Many heads of state elected by voting expanded their military power, abolished the constitution, evaded judicial sanctions, and prevented outsiders from reviewing their power for decades. William IV needed to develop targeted strategies for this. As Henry Daly, a Dutch democratic fighter, General Secretary of the International Labour Union, and Dutch social reform thinker, said, "Democracy is currently only a semi-finished democracy in Europe except for the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and democracy has become the only fantasy creature created in Latin America." The severity of the damage caused by presidents in Latin America varies, but all of them are involved in corruption, violence or oppression of people with different opinions in some form. For example, Argentina's current strong president Mitre often talks about strengthening the rule of law, but he is actually strengthening his control over the Argentine courts behind the scenes. This has caused dissatisfaction among various forces and ordinary people in Argentina. Arturo Lozon, who has become the president of northern Chile after Chile drove out former President Mascherano, blatantly continued the previous president's concentration of power in one person. It seems that many of his previous criticisms of Mascherano have begun to be reflected in him now. He was also found by southern Chileans to have tried to cover up and obstruct the investigation of private bribery cases between various local factions in northern Chile. With the emergence of the Latin American Democratic Dynamics Survey report released by the Australian Daily, people can't help but wonder how much impact this observation will have on the world. The European Times published its own views on the second day in Europe. This view is based on a report released by the World Trade Economic Forum, held in The Hague. Among these countries, Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Nicaragua, etc., Argentina and Chile are ranked as the countries with the lowest degree of rule of law. In this report, King Pedro II of Brazil seems to miss power very much, never giving up power, and severely suppressing the elected Prime Minister Fonseca, which makes both sides very unconstructive to Brazil's economic construction. Brazil's economy is in a slump and other problems seem to be powerless. In recent years, Brazil has frequently seen current senators and congressmen being found out of corruption charges one after another, but in the end, nothing happened. The Brazilian people complained a lot, and the trust in the Brazilian cabinet government and the royal family has reached the lowest level in history. As Argentina seems to be caught in the political vortex of the president's monopoly of power, other Latin American countries also need to be careful to prevent becoming the next Argentina. This report from the European Times warns that it is necessary to learn from the Netherlands to govern the country so that it can become as prosperous as the Netherlands, instead of falling into oligarchy like Argentina, which makes people victims. In response to this, the Dutch Socialist Party has joined hands with the International Labour Union to establish a dynamic freedom and democracy report to observe the development of democracy around the world. This report is called the Home of Freedom. Every year, the Global Freedom Report will be released in Sydney to watch, and you can also better understand the changing trends of international freedom, partial freedom and unfreedom around the world. Henry Darley, the Director General of the International Labour Union and a Dutch social reform thinker, is a monster created by William IV to promote democracy in the world. He obeys William IV's orders and is the trump card of the Netherlands to hold this democracy card. William IV told Henry Darley, "The reason why some countries cannot successfully complete the transition to democracy lies in the degree of composition of the state apparatus, the degree of implementation of the rule of law, and the degree of the emergence of accountable government." He emphasized that a successful modern liberal democratic country must have the above three aspects and maintain a stable balance between the three. Although it promotes the participation of citizens in the form of democracy in politics, it seems that the cognition of fate is still stuck in the pursuit of change in the form of protests, which leads to constant disputes. Chapter 686 How can the small socialist party be so powerful? Finally, William IV said to him, "What the Netherlands needs to grasp is the opportunity and benefits that the Netherlands can take advantage of in the process. This is the benefit of the democratization of the Netherlands." He raised his head and said to Henry Daly, whose face was full of excitement, "This fire will burn more and more fiercely. Latin America will be the first place, especially Argentina, but then it will burn to the whole of Latin America. We can use this moral high ground to eliminate those who are dissatisfied with us." Now no one in the world knows how powerful this card is, but that was before the Netherlands used it to attack. Now, it is the first time that the world feels how powerful the shock wave it brings is. On October 23, 1878, people from all over Argentina protested against President Mitr's power and monopolization of the presidency for 18 years, and asked President Mitr not to run for the presidential election that began in 1880. People were dissatisfied with President Mitr's attempt to continue running for the fifth term of the presidency after his fourth term, 5-year term, was about to end. In particular, many people protested in various parts of Argentina that Mitr wanted to push his son Carter to take office to succeed the presidency. They opposed Mitr's move because they wanted a presidential candidate, not a family dynasty. People in other countries also responded to the criticism of human rights in the Dutch report. Although the governments of both the north and south of Chile were somewhat dissatisfied with the Dutch accusations, the Arturo Lozán government in northern Chile said it accepted the criticism and said it would make improvements according to the report. However, southern Chile was dissatisfied and even demanded the destruction of these newspapers and information sources in southern Chile. This caused more dissatisfaction. In response to the Free Home report released by the Socialist Party of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Argentine President Mitr said at the presidential palace, "I warn the Dutch government of the Kingdom of the Netherlands not to treat the so-called democracy and human rights as private goods, because this will only make people sneer. I warn the Socialist Party that it will not succeed in its attempt to win over the forces in Argentina that oppose President Mitr under the guise of democracy and human rights, incite internal confrontation in Argentina, and engage in acts to split the unity of the Argentine nation." A reporter asked. According to reports, a team of members of the Dutch Senate and House of Representatives of the Dutch Socialist Party is visiting Argentina. Now the Socialist Party has released a global human rights report in Sydney, in which a lot of space is accusing Argentina, and the current visiting team in Argentina is also in close contact with those who protested your rule in various parts of Argentina and have run for the fifth presidential term. What do you think of this, or are you dissatisfied? Mitr said with an unhappy face, "This is the ideology of the Dutch Socialist Party that has always intervened in the domestic affairs of various countries. It has always liked to use its status as the largest immigrant party in the Netherlands to intervene in the internal affairs of other countries. With the cooperation of the Socialist Party, Argentina is currently very unstable. I am vaguely uneasy about this, and I found that many people in the country support this party in the Netherlands. This is the reason why Argentina is currently staging a ridiculous farce." Mitr said that it is well known that many immigrants to the Netherlands, including Argentine immigrants living in the Netherlands, have been anti-Argentine and ignored the development of Argentina. For a long time, all democracy and human rights have been politicized and instrumentalized by the Netherlands, becoming a standard for the Kingdom of the Netherlands to weigh the containment, sanctions in support of small countries, especially allies. Many people actually understand that this is a factor that the Netherlands interferes in other countries' internal affairs, creates conflicts everywhere, and causes a lot of damage to the cause of the progress of the rights of the people of the world. The Netherlands will hold a general election in December this year. The Socialist Party is the third largest party in the Kingdom of the Netherlands after the Liberal Party and the Christian Party. Currently, the three major parties in the country are constantly increasing their chips for successful elections, and scandals are constantly playing out in the Netherlands. Jules Darnathang, the leader of the Socialist Party, used to be the Prime Minister of Belgium. I think everyone knows this. He has defected from Belgium and become an important political figure in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Now he is caught up in the power struggle in the Netherlands. Everyone understands that Jules Darnathang is just destroying the national friendship between the Netherlands and Argentina for his own selfishness and that of the Socialist Party. The reason why he supports and encourages those dissidents in Argentina. Some are against the Argentine government, some are disrupting the stable management system of Argentina, and some are prisoners who have served their sentences and are trying to subvert the Argentine regime. They are the tools and puppets that the Netherlands has supported for a long time, and the Socialist Party is recruiting them at this time. Yes, I use the word recruit to highlight the danger of the Socialist Party. The so-called democracy and human rights of the Socialist Party are now the source of inciting civil unrest in Argentina. So we must put an end to it. In order to complete this mission, I will order the Dutch and Argentina to be evacuated to prevent major damage to the relationship between Argentina and the Netherlands. On October 28, 1878, the Argentine government officially announced that it did not welcome the Dutch socialists to enter the Argentine territory and stated that it would not deal with the socialists because the socialists had seriously violated the sovereignty of the Argentine government. In response, the Dutch Socialist Party was dismissive. Henry Daly, the honorary consultant of the Socialist Party, the General Secretary of the International Labour Union, and the Dutch social reform thinker, expressed dissatisfaction with Argentina's approach. He called on President Mitre to accept criticism, because this would enable Argentina's economy to progress and social management to be more peaceful, rather than taking an indifferent approach. He further pointed out that President Mitre should lead the Argentine government to listen to the dissatisfaction of more than 1 million Argentine workers, which would be the way to long-term stability, rather than the opposite. The Democratic Rights Party put forward by the Netherlands made the Argentine government ready for battle, which was seen by European countries as very vigilant. Countries were afraid that this wave would hit Europe and surge towards their own countries. After all, the Great Wave of 1848 made the various kingdoms become constitutional monarchies before it subsided, and it was also because the workers and middle-class people wanted to be under power. The human rights and democracy launched by the Netherlands now are different from those in 1848. Although this time it includes workers, it is more directed at everyone, especially the lower classes of society. So if the fire of the Dutch Socialist Party grows bigger and bigger, it is likely to spread to Europe, so we have to be on guard. Even Bismarck, who was visiting Vienna, was said to have marveled at this. How can such a small socialist party be so powerful? Chapter 687, Make Britain a Human Rights Persecutor? 1878, the Dutch Socialist Party published the report Investigation on the Dynamics of British Democracy and Human Rights in the Australian Daily. What shocked everyone was that this report pointed out that the British colonial army massacred more than 500,000 people in the Indian Ocean colony of India, and 200,000 people were missing in the Malay archipelago. In Burma, the local people were enslaved. The indigenous people in these places were living in poverty, and the people's most basic right to survival was exploited by the British local government, headed by the governor. It was horrible. Because of the human rights and democracy issues in South America, the Australian Daily has become the most watched newspaper in the world in recent days, even surpassing the European Times. The social elites have been waiting for this newspaper to point to the next place after the report on democracy in Latin America. Now the truth is out, it turned out to be Britain. Moreover, the report cleverly did not point to the British mainland, which made the British people very happy, but also very helpless, because this time the report directly broke the spell and pointed to the colonies in the Indian Ocean. British Foreign Minister Granville Gower summoned the Dutch ambassador to the UK, Markland, to protest the Dutch publication of The Land of Freedom, which criticized the British government by saying that Britain disregarded human rights in the colonies. In particular, the British Foreign Minister was very dissatisfied with the Dutch Socialist Party and the Australian Daily report that publicly accused Britain of killing the natives on duty in the Indian colonies. Granville was dissatisfied with the report, which summarized the number of more than 500,000 natives massacred by Britain in the local area, especially in Mumbai and Ceylon, and refuted it. I really don't know where the data in the Australian Daily came from, and I don't know why the Socialist Party, the third largest party in the Netherlands, made a report based on this, and even accused the British government in the name of human rights. But one thing I can confirm is that the Dutch government is letting the Socialist Party make various evaluations of the world, and then making criticisms like a human rights advisor. Britain does not support such criticism, and we also deny that the so-called truth accused in the Australian Daily exists in Britain. We are warmly welcomed there. Indians respect and admire Queen Victoria very much. It is completely unimaginable that the third largest party in the Netherlands would make such a weak judgment on the world superpower Britain. I would like to ask the Dutch government here, do you really want to offend countries around the world with the Socialist Party? In response to the protest of British Foreign Minister Granville Gower, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs expressed dissatisfaction. The spokesperson of the ministry said, "We in the Netherlands are a country with freedom of speech. In the Kingdom of the Netherlands, as long as there is no disrespectful words or actions towards the royal family, we will allow people to express their opinions freely." Britain claims to be the freest country in the world, and also claims to have the most advanced and best system in the world. When faced with a Dutch political party making statements about freedom and democracy, it should not be so angry and embarrassed. This will only make people look down on it. On the contrary, I think if Britain does not admit that such genocide tragedies have occurred in those places, why not open up India, Myanmar, Malaya and other places, and let journalists from all over the world go in to find the truth? If not, doesn't it prove that the British government is guilty? Once again, We call on Britain to maintain confidence in its own advanced system, just like the Netherlands. We will not support the Socialist Party's approach, but we will not oppose it either, because again, the Socialist Party's approach of pointing out various mistakes to the Netherlands and the world can help us discover our own weaknesses, which is worth promoting. We hope that Britain should face itself squarely and not blindly refute for the sake of refutation. The statement made by the Dutch Foreign Ministry spokesman immediately let people know that the Netherlands was leaning towards the Socialist Party. Obviously, the Dutch government had used the Socialist Party's British Human Rights and Democracy Report as a weapon to launch its first institutional attack on Britain in order to highlight the Netherlands' openness and confidence in this regard. However, Britain's rebuttal was at a disadvantage. For this reason, Britain was naturally unwilling to accept it. On October 30, 1878, at the Prime Minister's residence at 10 Downing Street, London, Prime Minister Clayton held a press conference. At the meeting, Clayton said that his cabinet government was re-evaluating Britain's diplomatic and military policies and concluded that since competitors had deployed a series of non-actual attack methods to attack Britain's image, Britain would ask the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to fight back. Britain and its allies may suffer strategic harm. Britain continues to uphold the principle of protecting itself and its allies while effectively counterattacking the other side. To this end, Britain will work with President Mitre of Argentina, the Mascayano government of southern Chile, and President List of the Confederate States of America to ban Dutch newspapers in order to prevent Dutch newspapers from infiltrating these places. He also said that in the face of the growing threat from the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Britain will no longer restrict its diplomatic alliances. He held the new version of the National Defense Strategy that will be released soon in Britain, accusing the Netherlands of intending to monopolize the Strait of Malacca between the Malayan Islands and Sumatra, which is a serious threat to British interests, and accusing the Netherlands of violating Arturo Lozan's policies. The report directly pointed out that the Netherlands will be Britain's biggest challenge in the next 20 years. In the new version of the defense report of the British Ministry of Defence, it is said that in the next 20 years, Britain will face the threat of 4 potential challengers who are the most direct challenge to its position for the first time in history. They are Britain's strategic competitors and potential enemies. These 3 countries are the Kingdom of the Netherlands, Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, South America, the German Empire, Europe, the United States of America, Atlantic North America, and the Russian Empire, Asia Central. The report stated that Britain will continue to work hard to maintain its hegemony at sea and will choose to communicate with various countries safely, but it does not rule out the full mobilization of British naval forces to defeat opponents when faced with provocations by British troops and allies at home and abroad. The document did not reveal the extent to which those opponents threaten Britain before mobilizing all British naval forces to deal with it. Is the current practice of the Netherlands sinking 8 British warships off the coast of Chile in South America included in it? There is no relevant description on it. Before winning this election, Clayton promised to work hard to maintain Britain's maritime hegemony and not allow countries including the Kingdom of the Netherlands to threaten Britain's maritime hegemony. Therefore, many members of the opposition Tory party expressed their agreement at the time, but the defense hawks complained that this strategy was not enough. However, in the past 2 years, the threats facing Britain have changed dramatically, and the world is no longer the same as it was 10 years ago. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 688 American President. The new version of the British National Defense Report directly pointed out that the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the German Empire, the United States of America, and the Russian Empire are the 4 potential threats to the British Empire. Countries around the world are unhappy because they are not on the list. This can only prove that they are not regarded as opponents by Britain, and it also indirectly shows that their country's strength is not regarded as the same level by Britain. These countries include the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, as well as Italy, Spain, and the north and south of France. At the same time, Stephen Douglas, President of the United States of America, which was on the list, warned in Washington that the world is facing the most dangerous and unpredictable 20 years since the end of the Napoleonic Wars before 1815, and said that what Britain and the Netherlands did in Chile is only part of the plan to reshape the world order. the President of the Commonwealth of America, attended the annual meeting of the Columbia University International Debate Club, an American think tank, in Washington, and pointed out that the era of European countries dominating world affairs is coming to an end, and the world with Britain as the unipolar hegemon is becoming a thing of the past. He said, "We are at a historic turning point. We are about to face the most dangerous and biggest 20 years of change in the century since the end of the Napoleonic Wars at the beginning of this century, early 19th century." Stephen Douglas pointed out that the so-called rule-based order proposed by Europe, especially Britain, in the past is just to put itself above the rules. This is undoubtedly dangerous, bloody and dirty. Any country has the right to choose its own path and living environment, and of course, to change its own country to find its direction and system. Stephen Douglas pointed out that Britain's current practice of gradually clearing the Netherlands from the geopolitical map in South America will never succeed. He believes that Britain will eventually be forced to negotiate with the Netherlands and other major powers on the future world order. Stephen Douglas continuously criticized Britain during the more than 3-hour Q&A session at the debate at Columbia University, accusing Britain of providing a large amount of weapons to the Confederate States of America in the south of the United States, southern France, and southern Chile in order to gain hegemony around the world, helping these regions to fight against the orthodox countries' governments in these three places. However, Stephen Douglas downplayed the possibility of a full-scale confrontation between the United States of America and Britain, including North America and the Atlantic. He said that the United States of America had never taken the initiative to say that the two countries might have another war. The United States of America does not need to launch a full-scale attack on Canada. Our target is the Confederate States of America that split off from the South, because it has no meaning at the political or military level. Obviously, the American president still did not dare to directly help the Kingdom of the Netherlands and directly provoke Britain. On the day after Stephen Douglas made his speech, British Prime Minister Claxton was quick to respond. In an interview with the London Times, he questioned, if he had no intention, why did he always conform to the Netherlands' practice? Why did he talk about changing Britain's position in the world, not to mention talking about Britain eventually compromising and negotiating with countries including the Netherlands? The London Times analyzed that American President Stephen Douglas' speech on Thursday was not primarily intended for the citizens of the American Commonwealth. He seemed more inclined to win over political radicals in other countries abroad. Stephen Douglas also intended to use the political differences between Europe and the Netherlands to alienate parties with different political views in European countries. The United States, like the Netherlands, is about to hold presidential and prime ministerial elections. Stephen Douglas's support for European and Dutch political parties is particularly obvious. It seems to be support for the Dutch Socialist Party to deal with Britain. Obviously, this is in line with a growing dissatisfaction of the powerful anti-British forces in the Netherlands and some European countries. All of these can make Stephen Douglas' speech resonate, especially mention that these words resonate with many people in the rising German Empire. Hugh Smith, president of Cambridge University and dean of the School of Political Science, believes that Stephen Douglas wants to blame the escalation of the Anglo-Dutch War on Britain's making rules in South America, and other newly emerging countries cannot change the original order. This has suddenly pulled Britain to the opposite side of the newly emerging countries, such as the Netherlands, Germany and the United States. Don't take it lightly. He wants to prove that the current escalation of the situation in Chile and Argentina in South America is the result of Britain's policy of intending to maintain its world hegemony. Hugh Smith pointed out that Stephen Douglas also seems to be trying to take advantage of the anti-British sentiment of the world's newly emerging powers. Now there is a feeling that he wants to establish an anti-British alliance with the Dutch government on a global scale. He does not think that the Netherlands is forced into a corner and running away from Europe to the Far East. He believes that being away from Europe like the United States is a biggest advantage. Instead, he believes that his own North American America and the Kingdom of the Netherlands in the Far East should be witnesses and beneficiaries of the birth of the New World. Stephen Douglas emphasized a close relationship between the Netherlands and the United States in Washington on Thursday. He said that the relationship between the United States and the Netherlands has reached an unprecedented level in the past 21 years since the establishment of a close relationship plan in 1857. He called William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and successive prime ministers the most friendly allies and partners of the United States, but he said that the Netherlands did not tell him and the American government in advance about the coup in Chile this month. Stephen Douglas expressed his continued support for the Netherlands' sovereignty claim over the Strait of Malacca, saying that it was wrong for Britain to destroy its relationship with the Netherlands by occupying the Strait of Malacca because of the Malay Island. He stated that the United States of America recognized that the Strait of Malacca was part of the Dutch island of Sumatra, and pointed out that Britain's current provocation of President Mitters' anti-Dutch behavior in Argentina was a provocative act. The United States did not support European countries intervening in the internal politics of South America, because the United States was the ballast of South America for the peace and stability of the United States. In addition, Stephen Douglas said that because of these practices of the United Kingdom seemed to have become the object of dissatisfaction of many countries, so he had not yet decided whether to send someone to attend the North American Security Conference to be held in Toronto, the United Kingdom. The statement of the President of the United States of America was a heavy blow to the United Kingdom, and an invisible side assist when the United Kingdom faced the attack of the Netherlands. The Netherlands had such an ally, which was very helpless for the United Kingdom. Looking around the world, the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire seemed to be fighting fiercely as Bismarck helped Austria-Hungary obtain supervisory power in Montenegro and other places in the Balkans some time ago. This pair of brothers in distress who will fight 2 future wars finally came together. The only partner of Britain seems to be the disloyal Second French Empire. And it is France that is divided in the south. The Russian Empire does not care about Britain at all. With the support of Sweden and Denmark, Spain seems to have secured its status as a great power in Europe, but these countries have shown a friendly side to the Netherlands. Well, Britain looked around and seemed to find itself too lonely. Chapter 689, 30 years in the East, 30 years in the West. 1878, the new version of the British National Defence Strategy was submitted to the Parliament in the form of a public report for the members of the House of Commons and the House of Lords to review when approving the defence budget for the fiscal year 1879. The next day, on November 1, 1878, after being reviewed by the Parliament, it was sent to Prime Minister Claystone for signature, and then arrived at Buckingham Palace on November 4. The Queen signed and sealed the new version of the National Defence Strategy at Buckingham Palace. Queen Victoria repeated the non-confidential content of the document issued by Prime Minister Claystone on the same day, and she elaborated on the different challenges brought by the 4 countries of the Netherlands, Germany, the United States, and Tsarist Russia. She said, "These countries are Britain's most important strategic competitors in the next few decades. Currently, the Netherlands and Germany are Britain's only competitors in the Indo-Pacific and Europe that have both the intention and increasing ability to reshape the international order. Among them, the Netherlands is the country that is currently most directly confronting Britain. While the Netherlands is rapidly modernizing its economy and even surpassing the British economy and expanding its military power, it has also taken more and more coercive actions to reshape the international system in the Indo-Pacific and the Americas, and has influence even in Europe." Her face was extremely solemn as she pointed to the National Defence Strategy in her hand at Buckingham Palace and said that from domestic information in the Netherlands, "We have learned that the Netherlands' goal is to become a world power that can fully compete with Britain by 1900, and the number and quality of surface warships must be on par with Britain. This is not to mention that the Netherlands has the world's most powerful submarines. If this demand is achieved, then in the future the Netherlands can use this powerful military force to carry out coercive actions, including military challenges to Britain and its allies and partners around the world." The British Queen said, "Unlike the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the German Empire is currently unable to challenge British interests outside of Europe and Africa. The Commonwealth of America has been suppressed and shrunk from South America, and its influence is only in North America. With the rise of the German Empire, the military strength of Austria-Hungary and Sweden, the Russian Empire can only look south, but because the Ottoman Empire is not weak, the Russian Empire is currently like a polar bear with its hands and feet trapped, unable to move. Therefore, the Russian Empire and the United States cannot directly pose a major systemic threat to Britain. The threat scope of the German Empire is relatively small. The only biggest threat to Britain at present is the Netherlands. The Kingdom of the Netherlands' current actions in Chile pose an immediate and obvious threat to British interests and values." Queen Victoria also said, "British warships will continue to play a role in curbing the expansion of the Netherlands' influence in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. If the Kingdom of the Netherlands launches an attack on Britain and Britain's partner Argentina, the solution will be something that the British and Dutch do not want to see, that is, a full-scale war between the 2 countries. Even the great British Queen Victoria personally went on the field to conquer the Netherlands and destroyed it. This made all countries happy that the struggle between the Netherlands and Britain caused by South America had finally risen to the highest level. Especially other bystanders, or those who wanted to reap the benefits. Soldiers against soldiers, generals against generals, kings against kings. William IV would naturally not continue to hide in Melbourne. As the most advanced industrialized country in Europe, Britain has been the leader in European development for hundreds of years. The Netherlands admires Britain's great contribution to the world economy. But Her Majesty Queen Victoria should have heard a classic saying in the Far East. 30 years on the east side of the river, 30 years on the west side of the river. Another more popular saying is that things will change over time, and it will be my turn next year. Most people in the Netherlands who have migrated to the Far East understand the meaning of these two sentences, which roughly means that there is no eternal hegemon or eternal winner in the world. The current economic scale of the Netherlands is enough to rival that of the United Kingdom, and its industrial scale has even surpassed that of the United Kingdom. Its technological advancement has surpassed that of the United Kingdom in most types. In terms of military, our surface ships, as mentioned in the United Kingdom's National Defence Strategy Report, have reached 80% of the United Kingdom's total tonnage, and the scale of our submarines is twice that of the United Kingdom. Moreover, we are serving the second generation of submarines, while the United Kingdom is serving the first generation of submarines. In international relations, the Netherlands has more advantages than the United Kingdom. For example, the Kingdom of the Netherlands has the most loyal allies such as Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, Greece, and the Kingdom of Siam. It also has allies with common strategies such as the United States of America, Spain, Sweden, Denmark, and Argentina. We also have core partners with common ideas such as the Russian Empire, the German Empire, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Ottoman Empire, and Mexico. Of course, other countries such as Italy and the north and south of France have good relations with the Netherlands and are partners of the Netherlands. On the contrary, the United Kingdom is currently in Europe because of its offshore balancing methods for many years, which makes countries very wary of the United Kingdom. At present, the United Kingdom's allies are only the United States of America in the south after the split, the Mascaiano government in southern Chile, and the Kingdom of Belgium. The rest are only half of Portugal, and Italy is a relatively close partner of the United Kingdom. The Ottoman Empire is considered a partner of the United Kingdom. As for the Second French Empire, its closeness to the United Kingdom shows that the German Empire has become more hostile because of the latest national defense strategy released by the United Kingdom. Why should the Netherlands shrink from the British, whose economic, military, imperial examination and international reputation are weaker than the Netherlands or cannot surpass the Netherlands? Why can't the Netherlands stand up bravely and contribute its own strength to the world? Finally, William IV said confidently at the Dutch Royal Palace in Melbourne, "I think the Netherlands should contribute more in the future, rather than standing still or retreating." In order to achieve this goal, the Netherlands announced that it will help the Netherlands allies to upgrade their submarines in the next 5 to 10 years. Our plan is to formulate a new Dutch defense law within 10 years to help the Netherlands and other allies and partners sell the Netherlands' current second-generation submarines according to the level of closeness with the Netherlands. In addition to the second-generation submarines, the previous limit of selling 1,875 Mauser rifles to a single country per year was limited to no more than 10,000. We will relax the limit in the new defense law and sell up to 50,000 rifles according to the level of allies. In addition, the Dutch government has formulated an economic strategy. In the future, the Netherlands will promote the Pacific Rim economic strategy and support the economic development of these countries. Finally, we in the Kingdom of the Netherlands will not take the initiative to challenge the United Kingdom, but we in the Kingdom of the Netherlands will not easily compromise with a United Kingdom that challenges us. I solemnly say here, the world has changed, and the United Kingdom should follow the trend and compromise when necessary. Quotation mark. Chapter 690, The Brazilian Empire was coerced and bribed. Brazilian Empire, São Paulo. Brazilian Emperor Pedro II frowned at the man in front of him. With red hair and a confident face, and the features of the Nordic Germanic people on the face of the man in front of him, he felt annoyed for no reason. Especially when he thought of Prime Minister Fonseca, who had just been mentioned by this person. Since Pedro II inherited the throne of Brazil in 1831, after his efforts, he succeeded in clamping down on the powerful ministers and took office in advance in 1840. At that time, he was only 15 years old, which can be said to have broken the history of kings in various countries in the world ruling by themselves. He checked the world history, and it seemed that in the world history, only the emperor named Kangxi in the Far East surpassed him. That guy took office when he was 14 years old. After taking office, he worked hard to govern the country, using the balance between the Brazilian Liberal Party and the Conservative Party to alternately manage government affairs, and he himself maintained the right to make decisions in the middle. In 1840, he announced the liberation of all slaves owned by Pedro II, which was greatly cheered by the bottom and hard-working people in Brazilian society. In 1850, he issued a ban on the trade in African slaves. He immediately became the leader of the liberation of slaves in America. Slaves throughout America were grateful to him. You should know that the most powerful country in America is the United States of America, and this country did not propose and pass the Constitution Act to liberate African black slaves until Lincoln came to power in September 1862. Under the wave of the abolition movement, his eldest daughter, Crown Princess Isabel, finally announced the abolition of slavery. Brazil therefore entered the stage of economic development. Pedro II encouraged foreign immigrants, especially European skilled immigrants, to develop domestic resources, so that industrial and agricultural production increased significantly, and the construction of railways and telegraphs also achieved great results. He also paid attention to the development of education, established many universities, and created the Brazilian Historical and Geographical Association. In foreign relations, he attached importance to developing relations between the United States and the United States, and opposed colonial interference in Latin American affairs with the United States and Argentina. He once publicly supported Chile's support for Peru's war against Spain's return to Peru in South America. And they fought with Argentina for Uruguay and fought the Second Uruguayan War. In the end, Uruguay became an independent country, which made Brazil and Argentina dissatisfied. But in the end, Brazil and Argentina tried to control Uruguay through slow infiltration. However, with the increasingly strong military strength of Paraguay under the support of France, it dared to invade the southwest of Brazil, which was a big slap in the face of the Brazilian emperor. In the end, Fonseca took advantage of the situation after becoming an army marshal and repelling the invasion of Paraguay, and ran for the Prime Minister of Brazil. With the power of victory, he became a rival to him in reputation. Even in recent years, as the influence of the Kingdom of Portugal declined, Brazil participated in the war between Portugal and the Netherlands, and the defeat caused public resentment. Pedro II himself offended the landlords and farmers who supported the monarchy with his attitude of supporting abolition of slavery. Therefore, under the influence of the United States of America, many Republicans, conservatives, were very angry and joined the liberal camp where Fonseca was, constantly calling for the abolition of the monarchy, which made Pedro II and Fonseca fall into a certain balance. When Brazilian Emperor Pedro II was lost in thought, the red-haired man in front of him still maintained his usual smile. However, if you look closely, you can find a sharp light in his eyes, which is the look of success and the general calculation. He understood that it was time to make a greater determination to the other party. Back then, Your Majesty was determined to consolidate Brazil's southern sea route along the Paraná River, so in 1852, Your Majesty led the Brazilian United Uruguayan Red Party's Fructuoso and the opposition led by Entre Rios senior official Justo Urquiz to overthrow Argentina's Rosas regime. I thought this would make Argentina follow Brazil from then on, but I didn't expect it to be a bargain for Argentina now. Although Uruguay agreed to cede a large piece of territory between the Ibrique River and the Querim River to Brazil, and recognized Brazil's dominance over the Dumilan Lake and the Yaguaro River, Brazil's expansion to the south reached its peak. However, Argentina's penetration into southern Uruguay has also become stronger because of this. He stared at the Brazilian emperor in front of him with a strange look in his eyes, and smiled. At present, President Mitre of Argentina seems to have reached some kind of agreement with Fonseca in Your Majesty's country, which seems to be very unfavorable to Your Majesty's restrictions. Pedro I's eyes widened a few points when he heard this, and asked anxiously, what agreement did they reach? It's no wonder he was nervous. Now he was very alert to anything that was not favorable to him in Brazil. At present, Argentina and the Netherlands had a tense relationship, which surprised him. Originally, the relationship with Argentina after the rise of the Netherlands once made him uneasy. After all, Portugal behind him was declining. So in recent years, his relationship with the United States has become closer. But the damn Fonseca was close to the Netherlands, so he could only develop relations with the British. He just wanted to use the British to balance the influence of the Netherlands. In the past 10 years, Brazil has finally maintained a balance under the influence of Portugal, the Netherlands, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Overall, because of the support of Portugal, the United Kingdom and the United States, it has overwhelmed Fonseca, who was supported by the Netherlands. But now he just heard from the red-haired man in front of him that Fonseca had reached an agreement with Argentina's Mitrita, which surprised him. The red-haired man said seriously, "Your Majesty, Argentina and the Netherlands are currently at odds, and the relationship between Argentina and the United Kingdom has taken a step further. Fonseca has reached an agreement with Argentina. Who knows if Argentina has been playing a role in Fonseca's relationship?" Pedro I suddenly seemed to come to his senses, and his uneasy mood was suppressed. He looked at the person in front of him with a smile. "Sir Isaac, as the Dutch ambassador to Brazil, you seem to be too concerned about Brazil, right? Your Excellency has a big plan." Isaac said indifferently, "As the head of the Dutch embassy in Brazil, I naturally care about domestic events in my country. Brazil and the Netherlands have a long history of relations, and there has been no direct war between our two countries, so your Majesty's suspicion seems a little difficult to understand." Pedro I suddenly asked, "Then why did you suddenly apply to meet me this time?" Isaac shook his head. "I was just ordered to come here for your Majesty's comfort." Pedro I stared at him without changing his eyes. Isaac said shockingly, "I got the news from Melbourne, the capital of our country. The Dutch International Intelligence Agency found that someone seemed to want to overthrow the monarchy in Brazil. For this reason, Melbourne planned a plan. Fortunately, we found it in time and have destroyed this organization." Isaac ignored Pedro I's half-believing and half-doubting eyes and said threateningly, "But next time, you may not be so lucky to be discovered by us." Pedro I's eyebrows pulled up for no reason. He naturally understood the other party's threat. It was because he understood that he was more distressed. If Fonseca really got the support of Britain, Argentina would stand firmly on the other side. In addition, Fonseca has always had a close relationship with the Netherlands. Portugal alone will not be able to achieve an overwhelming effect on him. He looked at Isaac with red hair in front of him. The latter happened to be looking at him. Seeing the other party's hesitant expression, Isaac knew that things had turned around. So he said respectfully in his tone at the right time, "Your Majesty, you know that the royal palace of the Netherlands is also a constitutional monarchy. At present, the whole nation of the Netherlands can support Our Majesty William IV, naturally because of your wise leadership, but also inseparable from our advanced system in the Netherlands." Seeing Pedro I looking at him without saying a word, he continued, "News came from Melbourne a few days ago. It is said that Her Majesty William IV was very angry when he heard that the organization was trying to overthrow your rule. For this reason, he personally ordered the destruction of the other party and stated that he would not support Brazil's abolition of the monarchy. It can be said that Her Majesty is openly supporting your Majesty's rule." Isaac's actions immediately gave Pedro I a way out, so the latter showed a relaxed expression on his face. Pedro I waved his hand and said, "The Brazil rule will not pose a threat to the Netherlands. Of course, if Fonseca forces his way through, you know, Fonseca is already full of wings, and it is difficult for me to completely stop him." Isaac secretly said that he was an old fox. On his face, he showed a gentlemanly attitude and said, "Your Majesty is very interested in Argentina, so next, we hope that Brazil can sit back and watch a good show." Pedro I pretended to be suspicious and asked, "What good show? About Argentina?" Isaac nodded and said, "Yes, as I said just now, Prime Minister Fonseca is too close to Mitre of Argentina, which is very bad for your Majesty and a danger to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Therefore, we, the Netherlands, and your Majesty have a common goal, so our cooperation with your Majesty is the best way out for both sides. What do you think?" Pedro I was very shocked by Isaac at this time. Since becoming the ambassador to Brazil in 1875, this guy has always been very low-key, and although he is biased towards Fonseca, he is fair to the royal family and has achieved a good relationship with him. It is for this reason that when the other party asked for an interview, he met with the other party after careful consideration. But he never expected that he would learn from Isaac that Fonseca had reached an agreement with Mitre to form an alliance. One intended to threaten the royal family, and the other intended to squeeze Brazil's living space in South America and replace Brazil's position. so it seemed that he had to accept the friendship offered by the Netherlands. Isaac's sharp edge at the moment gave him a lot of ideas. Argentina currently has nearly 30,000 people deployed in Monsanto. These 30,000 people can play a supporting role for Chile's capital Santiago if used well, or a threatening role if used badly. It is said that Mitre has also sent 20,000 people to San Carlos in Argentina near the Puerto Montt area in southern Chile. Whether it is a threat to the Mascayano government in southern Chile or to support the other side, no one knows. Pedro I reminded, Mitre is a very difficult person, so please tell Your Majesty King William's IV and Prime Minister Gerrit de Vries to be careful. Chapter 691, Germany and France want to swallow Paraguay. Brazil does not regard the Kingdom of the Netherlands as a competitor, but as a strategic partner that can achieve a win-win situation. On November 3, 1878, Brazilian Emperor Pedro I said in an exclusive interview with the Australian daily in São Paulo, the capital of Brazil, that Brazil's main goal in his later years is to develop Brazil's economy and society. Therefore, in addition to attracting capital from the United States and Portugal, another goal of our investment promotion is naturally to invite the Netherlands' most advanced scientific and industrial technology companies to invest in Brazil. We pay attention to the trend of global development, especially the economic, military and political competition between Britain and the Netherlands. We have already managed to make Britain the third largest investor after the United States and Portugal, but we will not be satisfied with this. Most foreign direct investment comes from agriculture and estates, and Dutch investors are also interested in these areas, so we hope that while the Netherlands will invest capital in Brazil's agricultural planting, we also hope that the Netherlands can promote Brazil's industrial development. As you know, Brazil does not object to the Netherlands competing with the United States, Portugal and Britain for capital in Brazil. As if to prevent Pedro I from taking the lead, Prime Minister Fonseca, his opponent in Brazilian politics, also said in an interview with the European Times on November 5 that the cooperation channels between the Brazilian cabinet government and the Brazilian royal family and the Kingdom of the Netherlands are unobstructed. We don't have any unnecessary conflicts. Like the royal family, we have a cooperative attitude towards the Netherlands. The best example is that we are currently negotiating with the Netherlands on food supply security. The Brazilian Prime Minister said in detail that Brazil is the second largest grain producer in South America after Argentina. The Brazilian government is cooperating with the Dutch government in food supply and is preparing to use the Netherlands' world-leading transportation team to ship Brazilian grain out of Brazil and sell it all over the world. Other areas where Brazil and the Netherlands can cooperate include transportation. Dutch investment helps Brazil develop railways and commerce. He asked you to attract investment for Brazil. One of the advantages is that Brazil is located in the central part of South America, which plays a role in connecting the South and the North. When the Netherlands and other countries need to expand further and need partners, Brazil often has a geographical advantage. He pointed out that the Brazilian government and the Dutch government have a very good relationship. He was very happy to accept the invitation to visit the Dutch South American territory of Suriname shortly after becoming the Prime Minister of Brazil to meet with former Prime Minister Thorbecke, and held a meeting with the current Prime Minister Gerrit in Suriname again this year. He said that he would meet with several Dutch cabinet ministers at the time. Finally, the Brazilian Prime Minister expressed his willingness to work with the royal family to promote comprehensive relations with the Netherlands. When asked whether the relationship between the Netherlands and Argentina would be an opportunity for Brazil to develop relations with the Netherlands, both Fonseca and Pedro I denied it. The relationship between Argentina and the Netherlands has indeed deteriorated, but the relationship between Brazil and the Netherlands has been very close in previous years, so if anyone suspects that we are using the deterioration of the relationship between the Netherlands and Argentina to promote relations with the Netherlands, then they are wrong. Pedro I said again, we will not make too many comments on the relationship between Argentina and the Netherlands, because Argentina is a strong neighbor of Brazil. To avoid misunderstandings, we choose to do it instead of saying it. Pedro I's words were supported by the aristocratic forces in Brazil. Prime Minister Fonseca, we will not interfere too much in the affairs of the Netherlands and Argentina, but we will support peace in South America. But Fonseca was supported by capitalists and people at the bottom of society. On November 5, 1878, on behalf of Napoleon III, Crown Prince Eugene of the Second French Empire, who arrived in Paraguay on the 3rd, held talks between the two countries with Paraguayan President Pelez. After the talks, The two countries announced that in order to restart the friendship between the two countries, Paraguay would purchase more French weapons and service from France, and make preparations for President Pellé's visit to Paris in the first half of next year. Obviously, with the visit of Crown Prince Eugene, the relationship between France and Paraguay has been restored, especially the arms trade will return to the previous level. However, it is not uncommon that on the second day after Crown Prince Eugene met with President Pelé of Paraguay, he faced Crown Prince Frederick of the German Empire, an old rival from Europe. The Crown Prince of the German Empire waved his sleeves and reached a series of agreements with President Pelé. The arrival of the German Crown Prince allowed Paraguay to balance France's strength against Paraguay. The competition between Germany and France from Europe has reached South America, making South America the focus of the world for the first time. Kingdom of the Netherlands, Australian continent, Melbourne. William IV summoned the relevant leaders of the three major parties in the Netherlands, Gerrit de Vries, leader of the ruling Liberal Party, Theo van Linden, leader of the Christian Party, and Jules Darneden, leader of the Socialist Party. Prime Minister Gerrit de Vries said, "Anyone with a discerning eye can see that this time Paraguay will no longer rely solely on France, but will choose a two-way choice. It is unwilling to be France's follower. Pelé wants to use the struggle between Germany and France to gain benefits for himself." Theo van Linden sneered, "People say that old people are not dead, but women. This man is only 51 years old now, and he is so cunning, which can be said to be unique in South America." Pelé had fought many small wars with Argentina and Brazil as early as 1864, but in the end he chose to retreat because of his weakness. Especially after France, the backer behind him, lost the war with the then Prussian German Empire in 1869, it completely gave up all the occupied southwestern Brazilian territories in 1870. Obviously, this old guy is going to expand the scale of his backers this time. Jules Darneden did not deny the views of the two people, but nodded in agreement, and said, "Pelé inherited his father's presidency in Paraguay, so he is very arrogant, which can be used. Secondly, this man is obsessed with Uruguay, and his purpose is naturally to have an outlet for Paraguay. Uruguay, located at the mouth of the Uruguay River, naturally became a thorn in Pélé's eyes. Thirdly, and most importantly, Pelé hurriedly introduced the power of the two European giants, Germany and France, for Paraguay. The current purpose is very clear, that is, to balance the power of Britain and the Netherlands in the current situation around Paraguay. At present, the competition between our kingdom and Britain in South America has stirred up the surrounding situation. On the Brazilian side, Pedro II seems to support the Netherlands and Brazil, but with the support of Portugal and the balance of Britain, we can only reach the level of influence with the United States there. But they still support us so clearly to be hostile to Argentina, and obviously their purpose is not pure." William IV smiled and said nothing. His eyes fell on Theo van Linden. Asked, "What is the race of Argentina?" The latter hurriedly said, "At present, Argentina is mainly Spanish and Italian, and there are a few other races, but more than 90% are Catholics." Chapter 692, Three Parties. William IV, what about Paraguay? Theo van Linden, the leader of the Christian Party, it is also a majority Roman Catholic. Brazilian Empire. Theo van Linden, Roman Catholics. What about Peru? Roman Catholics. What about Chile? Catholics and Protestants. When Theo van Linden finished speaking this time, William IV did not ask him again, but turned to the leader of the Socialist Party next to him, Jules Darneden, and said, "How can you let these Catholics ignore the friendship of the same religion and kill each other?" Jules Darneden replied without hesitation, "Interests, national interests and personal interests. Each team has its own position and interests. Therefore, only by hitting the nail on the head, these countries where Catholics are in the majority can be attacked separately." Gerrit de Vries and Theo van Linden's eyes lit up and they couldn't help but look at him. William IV secretly praised the other party's agility, and asked, "How can the Netherlands be divided and attacked?" Jules Darneden showed a gentleman's smile on his face, but said ruthlessly, "There is no need to sell the Netherlands. The current competition between Germany and France is the best gift for us to split the Catholic alliance." William IV glanced at Theo van Linden and Gerrit de Vries and asked, "What is the role of Germany and France?" The Protestants account for more than 90% of the German Empire, while in France it is the opposite, with Catholics accounting for 85%. It is understandable that Paraguay accepts France, which is also a Catholic, but it accepts the German Empire, a country with a majority of Protestants. And it is a country hostile to France. Then Paraguay has actually leaned towards the German Empire. Jules Stanadang said, Paraguay is betraying the Catholic South American League, which is destined to make Paraguay fall into the siege of surrounding countries. Palace will not make such a decision easily, unless there is a huge benefit. He will do it regardless of everything. Therefore, I think the gift brought to him by Crown Prince Frederick of the German Empire this time is definitely beyond everyone's imagination. Gerrit de Vries, who is the Prime Minister and the leader of the ruling Liberal Party, was shocked when he heard this. He hurriedly looked up at William IV, who nodded in confirmation. Gerrit de Vries felt uncomfortable. Because from the interaction just now, it is obvious that His Majesty William IV has begun to be more fair to the three parties. In other words, this is William IV's beginning to facilitate the opposition and opposition parties in the Netherlands to obtain a balanced ruling party. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart, and suddenly realized that, as the outside world predicted, the position of Prime Minister in the next Dutch election might change. However, that is all in the future. So he said, although Catholics account for 55% of Chile, Protestants also account for 45%. This may be the reason why Your Majesty is interested in Chile. On the contrary, there are too many Catholics in Argentina, and it is difficult to completely control them. What's more, Chile is within the Pacific Rim defense line built by the Netherlands. He further pointed out, at present, it is difficult to conclude whether Argentina is an enemy or a friend, and Mitre has dispatched 20,000 to 30,000 people in Argentina on the edge of North and South Chile. These tens of thousands of people have played a role that cannot be ignored in a situation in Chile. Theo von Linden worriedly said, the current situation in South America has entered a delicate situation. The Netherlands needs to deal with it carefully. Therefore, before we are fully prepared, I think we should try to stabilize it first. As the largest opposition party, although he is still a senior official in the province of New Guinea, he is still not as accurate as me, Prime Minister Gerrit de Vries, in international intelligence. So when he finished speaking, Gerrit de Vries denied it and said, all the current situations in South America are in our preset. He said, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget the 50,000 people that His Majesty asked us to prepare for the coalition of 5 South American countries. It will be very useful. Okay, William IV suddenly interrupted at this time. I called you three here today not just to let you analyze the situation in South America. It has been more than half an hour. After hearing this, several people couldn't help but speculate in their hearts, but they still couldn't figure it out. So they all waited respectfully for William IV to continue. William IV looked at the few people and couldn't help but sigh in his heart that he had spent so much effort to gradually lay the future political pattern of the Netherlands. 3 dragons struggle for hegemony. Each of the 3 political parties focuses on its own social philosophy. The Liberal Party is mainly based on the bourgeoisie, the Christian Party is mainly based on conservative aristocratic forces, and the Young Socialist Party is mainly based on immigrants and indigenous peoples. These 3 people represent the 3 major population blocks in the Netherlands. The bourgeois Liberal Party is currently the leader, and the other 2 parties are supplementary. There are many new immigrant elites, and the old capital group, the East India Company, faces the capital Far East group pushed by the aristocracy, and finally faces the new capital group, the Netherlands United Industrial Group. The 3-legged tripod has eliminated the possibility that the Netherlands will become a 2-party system like the United States in the future. The 3 parties are enough to allow the Dutch royal family to calmly face those who may abolish the monarchy. Ever since the Socialist Party started its overseas party alliance activities in the world, your parties have reaped great rewards. Gerrit de Vries, who are the allies of your Liberal Party? William IV looked at him and teased, don't tell me that is the ruling party, we are only communicating with the opposition parties in other countries. Gerrit de Vries said, at present, the Liberal Party has formed a sister party with the ruling Social Democratic Party of Sweden, the ruling Social Democratic Party of Denmark, and the ruling Socialist Party of Spain. We are allies with the opposition Republican Party of the United States. I have a good relationship with the opposition parties in other countries as well. William IV's gaze shot over, causing Theo von Linden to immediately follow up. The Christian Party is currently maintaining contact with conservative forces in various countries, especially supporters of the royal family. As the most staunch supporter of the royal family, our Christian Party can talk to the nobles of various countries as long as it is a monarchy. For example, The Junker nobles of the German Empire were invited to visit Australia some time ago, and as Christians, we are helping the Netherlands spread a positive image. So, Your Majesty and everyone, you all worried about the fact that South American countries are Catholics. In fact, don't forget that the Netherlands is also a country where Protestants and Catholics coexist in a relatively balanced manner. Currently, Catholics account for 30%, Protestants account for 55% in our country, and the remaining 15% are other minority sects such as Buddhism and Hinduism. Therefore, our missionaries of various sects are actually enough to make up for your concerns just now. Quotation mark. Chapter 693 Queen Victoria's Amazing Speculations. Buckingham Palace, England. The main overseas party that the Dutch Socialist Party is currently affiliated with is the ruling Democratic Party of the United States. The current Democratic President of the United States, Stephen Douglas, has a good relationship with the Socialist Party. Claxton said, and the Socialist Party also has a good relationship with various parties in South American countries. The Dutch Liberal Party and the Christian Party are not ordinary people either. When he finished speaking, Crown Prince Edward became dissatisfied. He said with some trembling, the Socialist Party develops in America, the Liberal Party has good relations with liberal parties in European countries, and the Christian Party occupies a dominant position among conservatives and sects. This has formed the starting point of the Netherlands' influence around the world. With this structure, the three major parties in the Netherlands have tried their best to expand their influence externally, extending their tentacles to those countries, and developing the responding parties in these countries into their stakeholders, and then controlling them, so that they can intervene in their domestic affairs to the greatest extent. Crown Prince Edward was deeply touched by the three parties headed by Jules Stannadang, Gerrit de Vries, and Theo van Linden and William Ivy's mouth. He exclaimed, if everything really develops according to William Ivy's idea, then what degree of influence will the Netherlands have on the world in the future? Even though he was the second-ranked politician of the British royal family, he was still frightened by the bold speculation. Before he finished sighing, Claxton said to Queen Victoria, according to the news sent back by MI5, our 7 warships in Puerto Montt have not found that the Dutch New Zealand squadron has any intention of going south. And according to the intelligence of MI5's informants in Melbourne and New Zealand, it seems that the Netherlands has no intention of sending more warships to support their New Zealand squadron. Queen Victoria's face changed slightly. Does the Netherlands not want to help Arturo Lozon take over the whole of Chile? But that's not right. If that's the case, then the Netherlands would not go to war with us there, and even go to the extent of causing the two countries to enter the stage of declaring war. Claxton was also thinking hard and could not figure it out. Crown Prince Edward suddenly said, could it be that Argentina has a bad relationship with the Netherlands, so the Netherlands changed its plan and chose to stay put? Argentina. Suddenly, Queen Victoria's eyes showed contemplation, and Claxton seemed to be inspired, and the two seemed to think of the same thing. Their eyes showed deep worry. Queen Victoria immediately walked to the map next to her, which was full of major global routes. As she walked, the other three also followed her to the 2-meter-wide map. Queen Victoria picked up the map baton and pointed at 4 locations. She said with a horrifying look, these 4 places are currently Santiago and Puerto Montt in Chile. Look here, this is where Argentine President Mitre is deployed on the western border. Mendoza in the north is next to Santiago. And San Carlos in the south is next to Puerto Montt. Mother, is there anything wrong with this? Prince Edward asked indifferently. In his opinion, the current pro-British Argentine President Mitre is naturally very good at such a deployment. After all, Mendoza in the north threatens Santiago supported by the Netherlands, and San Carlos in the south is to protect the Chilean army in the south of Puerto Montt. It is very beneficial to Britain. Queen Victoria said, of course there is something wrong. Facing this obvious threat from Argentina, the Netherlands did not react at all. This seems abnormal no matter how you look at it. She asked Granville Gower, has the Netherlands made any recent moves in South America? British Foreign Secretary Granville Gower immediately followed up, the Netherlands is currently in a very delicate situation in South America. Its relationship with Argentina has made the Netherlands seem to have lost a lot of influence. However, as Brazil's relationship with the Netherlands has changed from Brazil's support for Portugal in the African War to the failure of the relationship, to the rise of Brazil's powerful minister and the first Prime Minister of Brazil, Fonseca, the cabinet government and the royal family's Pedro II, who supported the development of relations with the Netherlands. Brazil has one foot towards making friends with the Netherlands and one foot kicking the Netherlands in the buttocks. But this is all in the past. As everyone knows, a few days ago, Pedro II seemed to have a soul out of his body and publicly talked about the declaration of establishing relations with the Netherlands, and Fonseca followed suit. At present, Brazil seems to have warmed up the situation of poor relations between the Netherlands and Argentina. Coupled with the alliance between Chile in the north and the Netherlands, it is not an exaggeration to describe the development of relations between the entire south of South America and the Netherlands as fusion. Queen Victoria continued to ask puzzledly, "What about other countries?" Granville also said, "As for other countries." He suddenly seemed to have thought of something, and said with a surprised look on his face, "The five-nation Pacific Rim coalition led by the Netherlands, with the 5 countries consisting of the Netherlands, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia, has now entered Santiago with a total of 50,000 troops from the 5 countries. It seems that the other 4 countries are firmly tied to the wheel of the Netherlands. 5-nation coalition? The 4 countries are tied to the wheel of the Netherlands and can get off?" Queen Victoria looked at the location of Santiago again. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something and was immediately panicked. When was the 5-nation alliance formed? She stared at Granville. Granville replied, "September 14, 1878. Clayton and Edward were shocked by this question and answer, while the latter still looked confused. Queen Victoria asked again without hesitation, "When did Argentina and the Netherlands fall out?" Granville seemed to have a vague reason for asking this. He said, "On October 16, President Mitre of Argentina announced his support for developing a more friendly relationship with us, Britain, and supported a joint cruise with Britain in the Strait of Magellan. As soon as this decision came out, it aroused the dissatisfaction of the Netherlands. After that, the relationship between the Netherlands and Argentina's archenemy Brazil warmed up." This logic is wrong. Queen Victoria frowned and calculated, "Where's the problem? Wait, according to normal logic, it should be that the Netherlands supported the Chilean coup, and then Argentina, which intended to exert influence on Chile, was dissatisfied and developed relations with Britain. At this time, the Netherlands was angry and formed a 5-nation coalition, deliberately excluding Argentina. But now the 5-nation coalition is formed first, which is obviously to anger Argentina, and there seems to be a factor of deliberately making Argentina angry. In addition, the whole of South America knows that Chile and Argentina have a close relationship among the people. If Argentines commit crimes in their country, they will run to Chile to hide, and vice versa. If Chileans commit crimes, they will run to Argentina to hide. With such a relationship, the Netherlands actually forcibly supported the coup, and it is obvious that it did not notify the local snake Argentine government. Isn't this deliberately embarrassing Argentina? So I suspect there is something fishy here. Chapter 694 The Future William II and Bismarck. Your Majesty, you suspect that the Netherlands is deliberately angering Argentina. No, it should be said that they are deliberately embarrassing Mitre's ambition, and then use Chile as bait to make Mitre or Argentina take the bait. Clayton deserves to be the British Prime Minister for the 3rd time. He thought of many possibilities. Then, he followed the Queen's thoughts and said shockingly, "The Netherlands has deceived the world. Their ultimate goal is not Chile, but Argentina." The others took a deep breath, and Queen Victoria made the final point. "From the beginning, the Netherlands has been circling around this, step by step, not hesitating to offend us, Britain, to trick us into this net, and then use this as an excuse to scare other South American countries, so that the Netherlands can form a 5-nation coalition. It's so powerful, one link after another, and it's so interconnected." "Oh no," Crown Prince Edward suddenly shouted. Seeing that everyone was looking at him, he suppressed his embarrassment and said worriedly, "If the Dutch plan is really like this, then is the calm during this period of time brewing a bigger conspiracy? If the Netherlands does not send more troops to South America, how will it deal with the 50,000 troops on the border of Mitre? I see. The 5-nation alliance may be a breakthrough for the Netherlands' 5-nation alliance? Is it really based on this?" The others became worried. While several British political leaders were discussing the situation in South America, someone in the eastern part of the North Sea was having a similar conversation. German Empire, Berlin. This is not just a 50,000-strong coalition force. It is also clear that in addition to the Netherlands, there are also 4 other South American countries, namely Colombia, Ecuador, Peru and Bolivia. The attitudes of Argentina's Mitre naturally understand this. Mitre will not easily confront the Netherlands, so he will keep his troops in place. Bismarck spoke freely and expressed his insights on the situation in South America. William I nodded and said, "At present, Argentina will not take the bait easily, but the Netherlands will not have much patience to wait and waste time with Argentina, so I think the Netherlands will take the initiative to put on eye drops for Argentina." Crown Prince William asked, "Should we continue to embarrass Argentina, for example, by developing closer relations with Brazil, or even touching the reverse scale and standing on Brazil's side on the Uruguay issue?" "No, William IV will never allow such a thing to happen. I know William IV, child, the King of the Netherlands is not something you can guess. You must be careful with him in the future. He is a fox. Then you are an old fox with even better means. He still can't escape the clutches of UN Prime Minister Bismarck." The 20-year-old Crown Prince William was also very loud and flattering. However, Bismarck didn't buy it. He smiled bitterly and said, "If William IV wants to take over Argentina, he must be very sure. It seems that every time we have to admit the results he created in the end, even though we are reluctant to accept that result in our hearts. Now the Netherlands is eyeing Chile and Argentina. Mitre was an ally of the Netherlands in the past, but now with the latter's ambition, the Netherlands feels that the conflict of interest is too obvious, so the Netherlands will naturally not give up." Bismarck's ruthlessness just now made Crown Prince William very dissatisfied, but he was a very patient person, so he hid it deep in his heart. Of course, this started a long time ago, but it has accumulated over time. When it breaks out in the future, it is really unknown whether he, the future King William II of the German Empire, will part ways with Bismarck, the iron-blooded Prime Minister, or even confront him faster after he takes power in the future. However, no matter how patient he is, he, who is nearly 20 years old, still can't help but refute from the side, "I don't think Britain will let William IV succeed easily." In the past, that was Britain's expectation for the Netherlands. Now Britain no longer has that expectation for the Netherlands, but has a firmer determination to confront the Netherlands. So I think William IV will now face a strong resistance from Britain. At least, as Prime Minister Bismarck said, William IV has achieved his goal, but the effort and resources he exerted are definitely not easily achieved. Of course, Bismarck said coldly, if William IV is ready to change the dynasty for Argentina, then the resources will naturally be surprisingly large. Seeing the eyes of several people sweeping over, Bismarck then explained, according to the analysis of our intelligence organization, although the relationship between the Netherlands and Mitre has deteriorated, the Netherlands still has many allies and other local forces in Argentina. As a federal country, Argentina's national government only plays the role of a general manager, and the local forces under it remain unchanged. Crown grandson William was startled for a while, and asked hesitantly, "The Prime Minister means that William IV may extend a hand of friendship to the local forces in Argentina, and while confronting Mitre, he will have more friendly contacts with them. But if this happens, it will be a big deal if Mitre knows about it." Bismarck said coldly, "Mitre is naturally scary at ordinary times, but what if it is Mitre in wartime? Or what about Mitre who is busy with his own affairs? Wartime?" William I smiled and said to his only grandson, William the Younger, "It means that the Netherlands may be brewing internal conflicts in Argentina. When the time comes, with the external war and the rise of internal opponents, Mitre may become the target of attack by everyone in Argentina, and will be busy with his own affairs. At that time, the Netherlands may really be able to use this to become another Dutch fortress under the tricolor flag in South America." William the Younger's eyes flashed shrewdly, and he smiled, "The power of the left-handed fisherman, this is what we should do, grandfather, Prime Minister, our current actions in Paraguay based on the actions of the Netherlands." Bismarck said confidently, "Although there is a gap, it is not far." Little William smiled even more and said, "In this way, in Paraguay, in the competition between France and us for influence in Paraguay, it seems that we have the upper hand." Bismarck said wisely, "France is no longer the original France. The France now is the France we defeated." Pellis of Paraguay is a smart man. He knows that cooperating with losers is definitely not as reassuring as cooperating with winners. "Little William, what is our goal in Paraguay?" No, Bismarck and William I laughed. "It shouldn't be Paraguay, our target is Uruguay." "Uruguay?" Little William asked puzzledly, "Why there?" Bismarck said frankly, "Because Uruguay is located in Paraguay, Argentina and Brazil. Now the Netherlands, which we are keeping a close eye on, has a complicated relationship with these three parties, which has triggered a political and military wave like a tsunami. If the German Empire does not take advantage of the opportunity now, when will it? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 695, Paraguay taking advantage of the situation. 1878, Paraguayan President Pelés said during a meeting with Crown Prince Frederick of the German Empire, there are historical territorial disputes between the country and Argentina. Currently, the territory east of the Paraná River and west of the Ure River in the northeastern part of Argentina belongs to Paraguay, just like Uruguay. It is just that Paraguay has been forcibly occupied by Argentina because of its weakening national strength. Although it has become the current reality, in fact, that territory has formed a powerful country with Paraguay, just like Uruguay. With Pelés's complaint in an international meeting with the crown princes of two European powers, it also attracted the attention of the world. President Mitre was naturally dissatisfied with the Paraguayan Pelés's actions. He bluntly said that Pelés's statement was a lie and misled the public. He accused Pelés of doing this, which was not good for the diplomatic relations between Paraguay and Argentina. The Argentine President Mitre even warned Pelés not to provoke trouble. However, other South American countries did not express other opinions. They obviously chose to remain neutral, unwilling to offend Argentina, a major power in South America, or Paraguay, which has the support of Germany and France. On November 10, 1878, the Argentine government said that the Argentine army had entered a state of high alert in the northeastern region of Argentina bordering Paraguay because Paraguay's provocative language made Argentina suspect that the territorial dispute deliberately provoked by Paraguay might further exacerbate the tension between the two sides. As early as 1864, Paraguay and Argentina had a dispute. At that time, Paraguay's request to attack Uruguay through Argentina was rejected by Argentina. Mitre, who had just been in power for 3 years, did not even bother to respond. So Paraguay changed its plan and directly made territorial claims for the territory between Uruguay. Now Paraguay's ambitions are exposed again, which makes Argentina worried. It is clear that Germany and France support Paraguay's approach. After all, the crown princes of these two European powers are still visiting Paraguay, and the ambassadors of these two European powers in Paraguay or in Europe have not come out to clarify their position so far, which makes Argentina worry. In response, Argentine Defense Minister Milles said, Argentine President Mitre has put the army on standby. Milles said, we are not ready to start a war, but we must not be unprepared. We are willing to continue to talk to the Pelosi government in Asunción, the capital of Paraguay. It is not clear what the Argentine Defense Minister actually means by standby. Internationally, many people speculate that Paraguay's jumping out to accuse Brazil and Argentina of historical guilt at this time is just to remind Argentina that it was wrong not to lend Brazil and Argentina territory to Paraguay last time, in preparation for the next attack on Uruguay. Of course, taking advantage of the tense relationship between Argentina and the Netherlands to take the opportunity to make territorial claims is obviously a direct stab in the back, which is not wrong. However, with Paraguay's request, the situation in South America has become more complicated, because many countries are worried about the uncertainty of the conflict caused by the serial wars between the Chilean Civil War, the Netherlands and the United Kingdom, and Paraguay's strong relationship with the European powers of Germany and France, which has led to the European powers using Paraguay as a springboard to forcibly cut into South American affairs, which may worsen the current situation. In the troublesome times, since 1864, Paraguay's ambitions against Uruguay have not changed, and the relationship between Argentina and Paraguay has seriously deteriorated since the borrowing of the passage that year. Many Paraguayans living in the northeast of Argentina have asked Argentina and Paraguay to ease relations and protested against the hostility of the Mitre government to Paraguay. Therefore, the current actions of Paraguayan President Pelés have put Argentina's President Mitre in an unprecedented passive situation. Of course, it also made Britain, which has been fighting fiercely with Argentina recently, feel the crisis, because it seems that if Germany and France support Paraguay to deal with the current Argentina, it is tantamount to helping the Netherlands, and further, it is a knock on Britain. Therefore, in London, Many think tanks began to deduce step by step how Britain should crack these situations. Obviously, the situation is very unfavorable to Britain. On the contrary, the Netherlands seems to have gained a blessing in disguise due to Paraguay's recklessness and relieved part of the crisis from Argentina. At this time, the President of the United States of America, Stephen Douglas, who has always been known as the Big Brother of America, officially visited Sao Paulo, Brazil. During the visit, Stephen met with Prime Minister Fonseca. The two further expressed that they would carry out economic cooperation. At the same time, they also said that warships would visit each other on the west coast of the Atlantic Ocean. They also believed that American affairs should be resolved by American countries themselves, and European countries should not be too involved. Stephen Douglas expressed great concern about the civil war between the north and south of Chile, and called on both sides to hold armistice negotiations. He also called on foreign countries not to add fuel to the fire. They did not welcome external countries to guide South American countries on how to rule the country, and they would not like to be manipulated like puppets, so he was ready to unite more American countries to launch the practice of handling American affairs themselves. Stephen Douglas's call was responded to by Pedro I and Fonseca. Obviously, the two American powers began to be exclusive, prevent their power from being invaded by foreign countries. However, their call was not appreciated by some people. These two people include Argentine President Mitre and Paraguayan President Pérez. Although we are not satisfied with the European powers pointing fingers at us, because it makes this continent seem to become a Spanish colony of Europe again, but to be honest, I am even more unhappy with some American powers pointing fingers at us, because this will only make Argentines feel that we are not as good as other American powers, which has hurt our self-esteem. Therefore, any diplomatic decision made by Argentina will be based on Argentina's own interests, rather than the so-called America as a whole. After all, the United States of America is now a big country that is on par with European industrial powers, and their industrial technology ranks among the top 5 in the world, while Argentina is just a medium-sized industrial country and a big agricultural country. As for Brazil, don't forget that Brazil is a monarchy. The relationship between Brazil and Portugal is difficult for the world to understand. As a major country in the South American Republican Federation, Argentina has chosen an independent policy. We will not be influenced by the United States and Brazil, because we are at least equal to them. Yes, I think so. Milei's words are full of nationalism, but they are very supported by many people in Argentina. So Milei was immediately welcomed by his people. Pérez of Paraguay also condemned the actions of the United States and Brazil. Obviously, he also used external relations to strengthen his ruling power and ensure that his country was firmly ruled by him. Chapter 696, Association of the Aristocratic Charter with the Magna Carta. The world was in turmoil because of the situation in South America. When William IV was dealing with the internal and foreign affairs of the Netherlands, the next generation of the Dutch royal family was taking a course on participating in politics in the palace under the auspices of Queen Alexandra of the Netherlands. The three-party system of the Netherlands, the Liberal Party, the Christian Party and the Socialist Party, made my father feel quite comfortable. In the political life of Britain in the 13th and 14th centuries, a major event closely related to the British aristocracy was the establishment of Parliament and the formation of a bicameral system. The emergence of Parliament was directly related to the emergence of the aristocratic opposition. The formulation of the Magna Carta in 1215 was one of the signs of the formation of the European aristocratic opposition. After that, the aristocratic opposition broke up and reunited. But in most cases, there was a political alliance that opposed the royal power. Alexandra educated her 4 children. Mother, what is the Magna Carta? The questioner was Princess Anna, the eldest daughter of William IV. The 11-year-old Princess Anna was very graceful, with red hair against her white skin, which made her look very eye-catching. The eldest son, Prince Albert, said at this time, the Magna Carta comes from the 13th century in England. At that time, the two most active forces on the British political stage in the Middle Ages were the British king and the nobles. The two sides formed a unique relationship of unity and opposition based on the land hierarchy system. The 8-year-old Princess Mary asked at this time, the king is opposed to the nobles, so isn't the king's power very limited? Prince Albert nodded and said, as the largest feudal lord with the strongest political and economic power, the king requires his vassals to be loyal. At the same time, he also needs to provide military obligations, pay taxes and tributes, and the king is also responsible for protecting the vital interests of the nobles. Prince Jacques, who is 1 day older than Princess Mary, said, "The king's responsibility is indeed great, but it has also become a mutual effect." Yes, Prince Albert said, the king must invite the nobles to attend the meeting to discuss state affairs and let these nobles play their role. If this is not done, the interests of the nobles will be damaged, and if the resentment is too heavy, they will unite against the king, and the royal power will fall into passive position. Princess Anna sighed and said, "It can be seen that the relationship between the king, the highest monarch of the United Kingdom, and his noble vassal is not a one-way master-servant relationship, but a two-way contractual relationship based on mutual dependence." Prince Albert agreed, "This relationship is recognized and protected by laws and customs, and it initially reflects the constitutional spirit of power division and restriction." Princess Mary then asked Queen Alexandra, "Mother, what do you think the Magna Carta of Britain represents?" Looking at the young people looking at her seriously, Queen Alexandra, who was born in 1844, is 34 years old this year. As she entered middle age, she felt that she had been urged to mature a lot by these guys. She suppressed her joy and couldn't help but smile. In most cases, based on common interests, the British royal power and the nobility can rely on each other and cooperate, especially in the period of Henry I and Henry II, when the royal power occupied a dominant position and achieved extensive political cooperation with all classes of the nobility. The king tried his best to reuse the nobles and make them participate in the affairs of the kingdom, and the active and effective government affairs of the nobles and courtiers, in turn, strengthened the king's feudal privileges. She sighed and said, "Unfortunately, even so, the Anjou dynasty in Britain at this time was still unable to get rid of the problem of succession to the throne. The contradictions between the royal power and the nobility appeared from time to time. In 1188, Henry II wanted to leave the throne to his youngest son John, but his second son Richard was furious. He formed a military alliance with Philip of France and relied on the support of some British nobles to defeat Henry II's royal army. In the second year, Henry II was forced to accept an undignified peace and died soon after. Prince Albert's sneak attack at this time, "Mother, is this the main purpose of father's current cultivation of the Liberal Party and the Socialist Party?" Princess Anna, Prince Jacques, and Princess Mary all looked at Queen Alexandra upon hearing this. It was obvious that they had recently paid attention to the world situation, but they were more concerned about the wave of attention that the Socialist Party in the Kingdom of the Netherlands had caused at home and abroad. Even the princesses and princes in the royal palace were no exception. Alexandra was stunned at first, and then said with a half-smile, "You have to ask your father, I can't say for sure." Princess Anna said unwillingly, "But recently the Netherlands and the world have been talking about this topic. Many people say that my father first used the Liberal Party, a big capitalist, to suppress the power of the aristocracy, and then was afraid that the big capitalists would rise too quickly, and now he is cultivating the Socialist Party with new capital to check and balance the Liberal Party." Princess Mary also said, "Yes, an article reported in the European Times pointed out that my father was afraid of what happened in the process of the British Magna Carta, so he chose to gradually promote a method that went further than the Magna Carta to consolidate the royal power." Although she was only 8 years old. But her cleverness was not to be underestimated, and her political mind made William IV admire her many times. Princess Mary then pointed out in a logical manner, the first article of the Magna Carta prohibits the king from levying taxes without authorization. The second article states that the king should be allowed to negotiate with the nobles and give them the power to negotiate. The third article states that the nobles have the right to personal freedom. The fourth article states the power to supervise the tyranny of the king and the opposition government. These are all centered around reducing the power of the king. In the end, power was given to the so-called people, who are archbishops, bishops, abbots, earls, barons and other titles above, as well as the great conferences with them as the main body. As for freedom, it is only the freedom of the nobles, not the freedom of the lower classes of society, because many people at that time were not free, and many were just serfs. As for the first article of levying taxes without authorization, it was just the feudal monarchs busying themselves with collecting military service exemptions and similar contributions from their vassals, which was obviously to suppress the king's income and prevent the king from becoming stronger. "Okay, Mary, your insights are really unique, very good." Pa, the familiar voice came, and the atmosphere that had just been gathered disappeared instantly. Princess Mary immediately glared at the person who came. "Father, You are destroying the atmosphere created by my performance." How hateful! William IV heard the words, his forehead darkened, and he laughed, then turned to Albert and the others and said, "You all performed well. In my opinion, your insights just now can be published in the European Times to compete with those special issue characters." Prince Jacques immediately asked, "What are the chances of winning the competition with Professor Herman van Perron?" Chapter 697, How to Take Advantage of the Chaos in South America. William IV smiled and stroked the head of his youngest daughter, Princess Mary. Then he held her on his lap and said with a smile, "If you want to compete with Herman van Perron for the current affairs section of the European Times, it depends on your strength." After William IV sat down, several children performed aristocratic etiquette to him and surrounded him. Prince Albert asked, "Father, many people are now saying that the Netherlands is implementing the aristocratic parliamentary system that was implemented in rebellion against the Magna Carta. They say that you are the only one in the Netherlands and that you should give the nobles more power." William IV shook his head. "My child, who do they represent? Who are their voices speaking for? Are the voices of the lower-class Dutch, immigrants and the bourgeoisie included?" He looked at Prince Albert and the others, and finally smiled bitterly at Queen Alexandra and said, "This voice should come from the Dutch nobles." Queen Alexandra nodded and said, "Your Majesty, you supported the Liberal Party of the new aristocracy in your early years when you took power, and now you strongly support the Socialist Party. This makes the Christian Party very dissatisfied. The Christian Party belongs to the old aristocracy, so psychologically speaking, they will think that your Majesty is partial." Prince Albert and the others suddenly came to their senses when they heard this. Prince Jacques said, "After all this time, it's all about jealousy. The Magna Carta allowed Britain to formulate and promulgate written laws, which clearly and specifically wrote general feudal principles into the clauses, but more implicitly stated and embodied the constitutional spirit of the supremacy of law and limited royal power." William IV sneered, "As time goes by, people gradually ignore many original texts, but the principles of the supremacy of law and the king under the law are remembered for a long time, and the royal power is lost." Prince Albert said worriedly, "According to what Father said, in the future, is it possible that the power of our royal family will be gradually weakened?" "More than weakened," William IV said disdainfully. "If the British royal power continues to do what the Magna Carta does, then in the future it will definitely add more new content to it and make other interpretations according to political needs. There is also the principle of declaring to the royal power that citizens have the right to be consulted. It clearly stipulates that the king must convene a parliament composed of a number of nobles. These are all aimed at weakening the royal power." William IV thought of the constitutional monarchy caused by the Great Revolution in Europe after 1848, and provided a legal basis for the emerging bourgeoisie in Europe to participate in the struggle of the aristocratic parliament. William IV thought that in the 21st century, the power of the European royal family had long been lost and became yesterday's yellow flowers. It was precisely because of this that this was also the reason why he moved the capital to the Far East Australian continent, away from the right and wrong place in Europe, and established himself as a king in the Far East alone, surrounded by the sea, and was free and easy. Look at the Thai royal family, the Cambodian royal family, the East Timor royal family, etc. in the 21st century. This generation can be said to be the area where the monarch retains the greatest power. On the contrary, with the evolution of Europe, the European royal family finally became a symbolic item like a mascot. The brothers and sisters took a breath when they heard what William IV said. William IV continued to use drastic measures, saying, "To weaken the royal power is to cut off your hands and feet, which is very cruel. Therefore, the Netherlands must be at the forefront of the times, but this pioneering effort is to maintain the royal power as our ultimate goal." Prince Albert suddenly realized, so my father supported the Socialist Party in the early days because he was unwilling to weaken the royal power. Instead, he weakened the religious and old noble power of the Christian Party while keeping the royal power unchanged, so that the new aristocratic force of the Liberal Party could erode and divide the potential share of the old nobles. William IV nodded and said, "You are right. The Christian Party, as a traditional force in the Netherlands, has been established in the Netherlands hundreds of years ago. In particular, the establishment of the Dutch East India Company, the combination of nobles and merchants made the King of the Netherlands in the 18th century, before the Napoleonic Wars, actually the largest noble. Other nobles and the East India Company accompanied the Dutch king to rule the Netherlands. The royal power has been squeezed by the shareholders of the East India Company. This is the masterpiece of the Christian party in its early years. Although Queen Alexandra knew some history of the Netherlands, she was not very clear about it. When she heard what her husband William IV said, she couldn't help but feel a little chilled. You can imagine how pitiful it is for the Dutch royal family to rule a country under the East India Company. No wonder her husband, William IV, was so enthusiastic about weakening the Christian party. Prince Jacques asked, "Will the Socialist Party use the same old trick to erode some of the areas of the Liberal Party and weaken the other party?" William IV nodded first, then shook his head and unexpectedly replied, "That's not necessarily correct." Prince Jacques looked at him puzzled, and so did the others. William IV explained in detail to his second son, because the Christian Party and the Liberal Party are actually a balanced body, and the share weakened by the emergence of the Socialist Party is already very small. The Socialist Party, in my hand, is actually just a sharp knife, he pointed out, but this sharp knife is a double sword. It can weaken the power of the two parties in the Netherlands, but it plays a greater role in connecting political parties in various countries abroad. The Socialist Party can actually be used to build bridges between the Netherlands and political parties in various countries to establish relations between the Netherlands and foreign countries. It is also a super means for the Netherlands to mess up foreign internal affairs. Therefore, the role of the Socialist Party is unique. Alexandra said, "At present, the Socialist Party has led the political party diplomacy. The Christian Party and the Liberal Party are following the pace of the Socialist Party. Will this squeeze the space for the Socialist Party to play?" William IV rejected it, saying, "No, because many of the Socialist Party's cards have not yet been put on the table. When these cards are shown to the world, the Christian Party and the Liberal Party will pale in comparison." Okay, let's stop with the political party issue. William IV interrupted everyone's thoughts and changed the subject, saying, "What do you think of the current situation in South America?" His eyes swept over Prince Albert. Prince Albert naturally understood what this meant. After pondering for a while, he said slowly, "Brazil is watching the show. Argentina's diplomacy is disorganized but it is relatively stable under Mitr's strong rule. Chile seems to have to continue the civil war. Other South American countries continue to watch and do not participate. Germany and France in Europe love Paraguay and there must be a conspiracy plan. America and Brazil seem to like each other. It's hard to explain. The compromise relationship between Britain and Argentina makes the situation even more confusing, and the biggest change is the Netherlands under my father. The Netherlands has filled South America with more uncertainty. Therefore, if South America really needs to be described, it is not an exaggeration to describe it as a mess. If you come to guide, how do you think the Netherlands should get the most benefit from this chaos in South America?" After asking, William IV also said to the others, "Think about it, if you were in my position, how would you strive for greater benefits?" Chapter 698, Britain is not a threat to America. While the international community was keeping a close eye on the chaos in South America, on November 13, 1878, the Republican Party of the United States opposed the Democratic Party's proposal to revise the security documents in the United States Congress. The Republican Party and the Democratic Party had different opinions on the British threat. The Washington Post reported that the opposition Republican Party did not deny the security environment of the United States. It became more severe because the surrounding areas were all British territories or followed the Confederate States of America in the South. Especially after the United States split into North and South America, the relationship between the United States and the Confederate States has become increasingly severe in the past 17 years. Britain's support for the South has made the North American Federation even more dissatisfied at this moment. However, the Republican Party believes that writing Britain is a threat at this time will inevitably lose the dialogue channel with Britain, a world-class superpower. President Stephen Douglas of the Democratic Party plans to revise 3 security documents, including the American Security Strategy, National Defense Strategy and Naval Expansion Plan by the end of the year. Many newspapers in the United States believe that this will be a major turning point in the security field of the United States. In response to the increasingly bizarre situation in Europe and the increasingly fierce struggle between the Netherlands and the United Kingdom in South America and the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, the United States needs to make more efforts to protect its homeland and guard against the United Kingdom. However, the Republican Party is lobbying members of Congress to prevent the Democratic Party from making enemies, advocating that Britain should not be written into the bill as a threat. The New York Times reported that in response to the above three security documents, the Democratic Party set up a working group in January this year and held more than 11 cadre-level meetings. The ruling Democratic Party will revise some of the contents, including increasing the budget for the defense of the United States, strengthening the United States military strength to protect the homeland while also having the ability to fight overseas. In addition, in terms of overseas attack capabilities, the Democratic Party intends to add counterattack capabilities to the revised documents to break the principle of exclusively defending the homeland. In addition, the document also raises the alarm about the continuous increase in the UK's defense budget over the past decade, and intends to include Britain as a threat in the security document. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are arguing over this document in Congress, and it is called consultation on the surface. But the effect is not great. At the third meeting on Wednesday, the two parties had a big difference on the issue of Britain. The New York Times reported that the Republican meeting prevented the Democratic Party from calling Britain an enemy. Simon Cameron, French, former American Secretary of War and Republican Indiana congressman, prevented the Democrats from taking the initiative. He said, "We must adhere to the principle of exclusive defense and only take action after the other side launches an armed attack." Democratic President Stephen Douglas, who attended the meeting, was dissatisfied with the conversation and retorted, "How can we do nothing before the other side attacks?" After the third meeting, some Democrats also said, "If we already know that someone has a sword or a gun hidden behind their back, we have no choice but to regard it as a threat." The Washington Post reported, the Republican Party did not deny the threat of Britain to the United States, but the Republican whip Tiger advised the Democratic Party, even the Dutch internet celebrity Guaguo only positioned Britain as the biggest competitor, and did not say she was a threat. "You must know that Britain and the Netherlands have declared war on each other now." These words of the Republican Party reflect that the party does not want a head-on conflict with Britain in its security strategy and wants to leave room for diplomatic dialogue. Many reports say that the United States' 1878 diplomatic blue book did not use the word threat against Britain. It only said that the American region and the international community, including the United States, have expressed strong concerns about the choices made by Britain on security issues. On the other hand, the European Times reported that the United States Ministry of Defense held a joint meeting with the Democratic Defense Group and other superstars on November 2 and proposed the second supplementary budget for $1,878. The total amount of the supplementary budget is $20 million. The expenses include the establishment of a larger deep-water military dock project in California and the development of the Pacific coast. According to the European Times, in the budget, the United States will propose to the Kingdom of the Netherlands to order 10 second-generation Dutch submarines, worth more than $5 million, with an average price of $500,000 per ship. In addition, the budget also includes Dutch weapons equipped with submarines, including the second-generation Barracuda torpedo currently in service in the Netherlands, and the cost of inviting Dutch experts to help build the San Francisco submarine docking port. Because the Democrats backed off on the issue of Britain being a threat, the Republicans did not block the military budget. In the end, the $20 million supplementary military budget was passed by both the Senate and the House on November 16 and took effect after Stephen Douglas signed it. Soon the military purchase document arrived in Melbourne, along with the news that Thomas A. Hendricks, the Secretary of State of the United States, would visit Melbourne, the Kingdom of the Netherlands. On November 17, 1878, Britain expressed its gratitude to the Republicans for preventing the United States from regarding Britain as a threat. Clayton highly appreciated the Republicans' approach and said that Britain was willing to work with the ruling party of the United States and the opposition Republicans to shape a new Anglo-American relationship. He finally said that Britain would not take the initiative to attack the American mainland, and he asked all Americans to rest assured. At the same time, in Melbourne, Australia, King William IV of the Kingdom of the Netherlands met with Crown Prince Frederick of the German Empire in Melbourne, who had just arrived after leaving Paraguay. Crown Prince Frederick sent greetings to King William IV on behalf of German Emperor William I. The two sides had an in-depth and frank exchange of views on the situation in South America, believing that it is crucial to compromise and control differences and maintain peace and stability in South America. They agreed to properly handle the chaos in South America and coordinate to contribute to long-term peace and stability in the region. The two sides also agreed to deepen cooperation on economic issues, actively negotiate on European issues that do not affect their respective positions and advocate transitional and temporary solutions, and agree to work together to maintain peace in Europe. The Netherlands is currently engaged in a proxy war with Britain in Chile, and previously it was engaged in a warship war at sea. Germany's investment in Paraguay shows that both the Netherlands and Germany are interested in these two footholds in South America. So the visit of Crown Prince Frederick at this time can be said to be a perfect match. As the German Empire's hegemony in Western Europe becomes more and more consolidated, it is natural for Germany to expand its influence outside Europe. Therefore, William IV has already anticipated that after Bismarck has laid out Paraguay in South America, the war in South America will definitely expand, but he does not know to what extent it will burn in the end. Chapter 699 Will the future German Empire Frederick III compromise? In Melbourne, King William IV personally received the visiting Crown Prince Frederick of the German Empire in the Royal Palace of the Netherlands. After dismissing irrelevant people, the two held a private meeting. After the two sat down, William IV joked, "Your Highness the Crown Prince and Queen Victoria have many children. Although one died young, there are still 7. It can be said that it makes up for the regret that His Majesty William I only has 2 children and the royal blood is scarce." Crown Prince Frederick looked at William IV with a smile and retorted, "Your Majesty is also capable. Queen Alexandra gave birth to 4 children for Your Majesty, and the Queen is only 34 years old now, which is a good age for childbearing. However, Your Majesty may have only 1 child less than me now, so I have nothing to be complacent about." William IV was stunned at first, then glared at the other person with a helpless smile. Obviously, the guy in front of him was counterattacking Greece. So, he changed the subject and smiled bitterly. "Alexandra has no objection to giving birth to 5 children, but her current energy is focused on the education of those 4 guys. She seems to feel that there is a conflict in time. By the way, Your Majesty's trip to Paraguay in South America is quite rewarding. Although it's good, it's still a bit uncomfortable to have someone following you." Crown Prince Frederick was naturally not tactless, so he changed the subject according to William IV's words. "Come on, you German Empire are just being ungrateful after getting the advantage. Napoleon III of the French Empire was captured by you in 1870 and became a prisoner. Later, you gave you 2 large tracts of territory in the east, and you cut off the source of the problem by supporting the establishment of the Third French Republic in the south of France, which almost split the French Empire in 2. William IV was greatly amazed and said, "In this way, Napoleon III, who returned home, suddenly lost the basis for revenge on the German Empire. He suddenly lost most of it, or even more than that. In order to guard against the South, he needs to use more than half of the army that originally had only ordinary territory and population to guard against the Third French Republic in the South." He raised his head and said admiringly, "I have to say that Your Majesty and Prime Minister Bismarck hit the snake at its weakest point and made Napoleon III unable to move." Upon hearing this, Crown Prince Frederick smiled more confidently, but he said modestly, "The Kingdom of the Netherlands has developed rapidly since 1870, especially the Far East. The economy is almost the same as the Dutch territory in Europe. If there is any difference, it is that the population here is larger, the people's territory is larger, and the development potential is even greater. And look at the series of developments in the Far East deployed by Your Majesty, especially the Australian continent. Almost all high-tech is currently being developed here, and industrial products are first born here. At present, the Netherlands' newest military warships and the newest submarines have been launched here, and all large companies and nobles have taken root here. All of this has fully proved Your Majesty's far-sighted policies," he said self-deprecatingly, quietly. "Our German Empire is currently surrounded by the European continent, and everyone is watching us closely. It's very uncomfortable. The so-called Paraguay may be a new hope for the German Empire." Ignoring the vigilance after Crown Prince Frederick's astonishment, William IV said very frankly, "The German Empire obtained French Guiana from the Second French Empire in 1870 and officially settled in South America. I didn't understand before why Prime Minister Bismarck and His Majesty William I came all the way to favor French Guiana. In recent years, people from the German Empire have flocked to Uruguay and Paraguay." William IV chuckled and said, "It turns out that Germany has been interested in South America as early as 1870. With the Crown Prince's trip to Paraguay this time, I am more certain of this judgment." He looked at Crown Prince Frederick and said without hurting, "In fact, The Netherlands also supports Germany to exert greater influence in South America. Crown Prince Frederick was shocked when he heard this. He understood that William IV was telling him the truth, but at the same time he was also asking him for conditions for the support of the Netherlands. Crown Prince Frederick said with a serious expression, "At present, the Liberal Party has a dominant position in the Dutch Senate and House of Representatives. Even if it seems that the Liberal Party is still the largest party in the Netherlands in terms of votes, if the Socialist Party chooses to unite with the Christian Party, the two parties are likely to not only win the Senate and House of Representatives in the national elections in the Netherlands from December 10th to December 20th, but also make the Liberal Party lose the Prime Minister in one fell swoop. Therefore, in the next month or so, the Liberal Party government will inevitably be tougher on Britain, and Chile and Argentina will become the main battlefields. The German Empire must think about how to compete with Britain in South America with the Netherlands, while maintaining a peaceful relationship with Britain in Europe." William IV continued to wait for the other party to continue, and it was obvious that the so-called German position of Crown Prince Frederick seemed to have nothing to do with him. If there were someone next to him now, he would see that Crown Prince Frederick of the German Empire, who was born in 1831, showed an unbearable disadvantage on his face when facing King William IV of the Netherlands, who was born in 1840. Obviously, as the conversation progressed, William IV slowly suppressed Crown Prince Frederick and began to take the initiative in the talks. Crown Prince Frederick naturally knew his situation, but there was nothing he could do about it. The German Empire had a shallow foundation in South America. Compared with the Dutch allies who occupied 1/3 of the territory in South America, plus 2/5 of Argentina, Germany was more in need of the support of the Netherlands. Of course, his visit to Melbourne this time was when Bismarck saw a flaw in the Dutch circle of allies in South America, so his visit to Melbourne was not to deepen the friendship between the two countries, but rather to provide William IV with a bait. This bait was to let the Netherlands see that when facing Britain, the Netherlands needed a strong ally, and the German Empire could provide this service. He understood, and he also knew that William IV naturally understood. So he said, "Paraguay is currently proposing to form a reliable alliance with the German Empire. By then, the relationship between Paraguay and Argentina is not very good, and we are hesitating." "What are you hesitating about?" William IV seemed to ask. Crown Prince Frederick said, "Your Majesty also knows that Paraguay is not surrounded by the sea. If the German Empire needs to enter Paraguay, it will need to cross its neighboring countries, and Uruguay is wary of Paraguay. There are Brazilian and Argentine spies all over the country. Any disturbance cannot be hidden from the other side." Chapter 700, The Netherlands will be tougher on Britain in the future. William IV laughed, and then said, "Are you asking me to help you provide convenience to support Paraguay?" "Yes, as long as the Netherlands supports us, then Paraguay will be like this," said Crown Prince Frederick confidently. William IV stared at him thoughtfully for a while, and asked with a frank smile, "What benefits can the Netherlands get?" Crown Prince Frederick took a deep breath, and then seemed to have made a decision. "We know that your Majesty has always been very concerned about Qatar. If the Netherlands is willing to support us, then we are willing to lease Qatar to the Kingdom of the Netherlands for 100 years. William IV did not hide his joy, but he frowned at last and said, "It's not a lease, but a transfer. I think the price will be the same as the last time in East Oman." The future Majesty Frederick III of the German Empire finally gained the support of the Netherlands for the military assistance of the German Empire to support Paraguay after compromise. From the southeast coast of the Pacific Ocean, the Dutch ally North Chile-Bolivia corridor entered Paraguay. On November 25, 1878, Herman van Perron, the president of the University of Sydney in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the honorary dean of the 1862 Diplomatic Academy of Leiden University, and also a special commentator for the most influential European newspapers European Times and Australian Times, expressed his view that the Netherlands will have a tougher foreign policy towards Britain in the future at the Pacific Forum lecture New Developments in the Dutch-British Competition in South America. Herman van Perron also shared his preliminary research report on the myth of war that he had conducted in the past 6 months. It was found that among the 200 Dutch and British politicians, capital giants and scholars interviewed, more than 90% of the London elites were worried about the South American War and the Indian Ocean War between Britain and the Netherlands, while only 70% of Melbourne scholars believed that there was probably room for negotiation between the two countries. Nearly 30% of the interviewed London elites believed that the British and Dutch war in the Indian Ocean might occur after February 20, 1879. In Herman van Peron's interview reports with the European Times and the Australian Times, 31.03% of the London elites believe that Britain and the Netherlands might go to war after February 20, 1879, because a new cabinet government had already appeared in the Netherlands at that time. 48.28% believe that the century was between 1884 and 1888, and 10.34% believe that it would be after 1900. Melbourne scholars who study the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands are also very worried, and more than 70% believe that there will be a war between 1879 and 1883. Herman van Peron said, "During our discussions in London, most scholars who have close ties with Buckingham Palace and Downing Street in London feel that war is possible and is becoming more and more urgent, especially as the Dutch domestic election is getting closer, December 20th. Many people involved in London politics believe that the Dutch Liberal Party will lose power, and the Christian Party and the Socialist Party may become the first two-party coalition cabinet government in Dutch history. The Christian Party is the most powerful party in the Netherlands. Many people believe that if the Christian Party comes to power, then the Netherlands' strong diplomacy and military in the future will definitely be detrimental to the relationship between Britain and the Netherlands. I don't mean alarmist, but the media and newspapers of the two countries need to inform the society of the real information. The people make the right judgments and choices with wisdom. I don't think that 70% of the British people are willing to fight for hegemony in the Indian Ocean as the British media claims, but I think 60% of the people in America are very likely." Herman van Peron said in the report that he unexpectedly found that London was very confident in South America, especially after supporting Argentine President Mitre to fight against the Netherlands. Spokesmen from the offices of the Speakers of the House of Lords and the House of Commons of the United Kingdom both announced that the information given by Argentina was that 100% of the people supported President Mitre. The United Kingdom is using 70% support to go to war with the Netherlands in the Indian Ocean. But the British people also support Argentina 70%. Therefore, many think tanks in London believe that Argentina is ready to face the suppression and invasion of the Netherlands and other countries. This is obviously different from his cognition. What information did Argentina give to the United Kingdom that made the United Kingdom think that Argentina was going to go to war with the Netherlands? In this regard, Carlos, an Argentine-American professor at the University of Melbourne who has immigrated to the Netherlands for many years, pointed out at the forum, if there is a crisis, does Argentina want to tell the world whether it wants peace or wants to be the anti-Dutch representative of Britain to oppose Dutch influence in South America? Or is it willing to do anything to resist the Dutch? What message does Argentina want to convey to Britain? Does Argentina want to go to war? Or is there a way to resolve it through diplomacy? He pointed out in the Australian Times that President Mitre divided Argentina's role in the trilateral relationship between the Netherlands, Britain and Argentina into a yin-yang phase. President Mitre deliberately let most countries far away from Argentina see Argentina's yang phase, thinking that Argentina was opposing the expansion of the influence of European countries and that Argentina was the embodiment of justice in South America. But people in Argentina knew that President Mitre had long been preparing for this anti-Dutch movement, and the alliance with Britain to fight the Netherlands had already begun, just to strengthen the consolidation of its own strength. This was actually a bad plan to drive the wolf and lure the tiger. This yin-yang face gap made the Netherlands more convinced that President Mitre was linking up with Britain to promote anti-Dutch in Argentina and even in South America, which the Netherlands absolutely did not want to see. Regarding Professor Carlos's yin-yang comment, Professor Herman van Peron, president of the University of Sydney, said, "Why did the British Clayton cabinet government feel that 100% of the Argentine people were willing to fight for Mitre's rule? What message did Argentina want to convey? What did the British hawks most hope that the Argentine Mitre government would prepare guns and set up shields?" Herman van Peron believes that everyone has learned different lessons from the Chilean War. Who will win in the future elections in the Kingdom of the Netherlands? Will the strongest prime minister in the Kingdom of the Netherlands form a cabinet government? This is crucial to Argentina's security. After each Dutch political party comes to power, there will be earth-shaking changes in the way it handles domestic and foreign affairs. The Liberal Party puts capital first, the Christian Party puts aristocratic conservatism and religious doctrine first, and the Socialist Party's new capitalism and connections within each country. The three parties have different focuses. Finally, Herman van Peron and Professor Carlos both agreed that the Netherlands will inevitably become tougher on Britain and Argentina in the future, And it is time for other countries to think about how to maintain relations with the two countries when they view the competition between Britain and the Netherlands. On the issue of South America, if Britain's counterattack is too much, then a full-scale war is about to happen. I think it is time for Buckingham Palace and 10 Downing Street to think about how to cool down the tension between Britain and the Netherlands. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.